This is Black Souls 2, one of the most disgusting and repulsive horror games that I'd ever have to experience.
And today, I'm going to be forcing you guys to sit through this game with me, because we're going to go through the lore of this game, the gameplay of it, and to try to figure out why it's such a repulsive game to begin with. Like, does the disgustingness of this game serve any purpose? Does it even need to be in here? Well, we're going to figure that out. Who are you, dude?
Worn out places, worn out faces, bright and early for their daily races, going nowhere, going nowhere. The tears are filling.
Starting things off in Black Souls 2 is similar to the first game, as we are prompted to choose a class to play as. Now, just like the first game, the class you choose doesn't really matter because you're going to be strong enough later in the game that the initial boosts you get don't really make much of a difference. But for now, I choose a Templar, but as we load in, we hear the voice of someone lovely and beautiful, or at least that's what Grimm thinks. But before long, we get prompted with a name. Mother Alice? Yeah. To say that that's a little weird is, well, pushing it, but Alice was a character in the first game who, well, helped us, and also who was there to take down the evil Mary Sue, but here she is our mother? And it doesn't stop there. Our interactions with her are really weird considering the quote-unquote relationship we're supposed to have with her, because she asks us what we think about what she's wearing, and in Black Souls fashion, one of the option is very tight. So, yeah, the game hasn't really changed much in that regard, but nonetheless, after having a conversation with her, we start falling asleep again. But when we awaken, something is different. Now, Alice is gone, and the music is shifted too. But as we start walking, things get even weirder. The ground starts to open up on us. Something is not right. It's, again, as if the world is breaking apart as we walk here, and before long, we are stuck.
Alice, a childish story take, and with a gentle hand laid where little girls' dreams are twined. In memory's mystic band, like pilgrims withered wreath of flowers plucking in a far-off land.
Now we're somewhere new. This place is called the Crash Chamber, and it's a place filled with, well, bodies. It's littered with blood and corpses, and on the ground is something brand new that I really want to talk about, by the way, which is the messages on the ground. Just like in Dark Souls, these are messages that can be left by players or, of course, the developers. In this case, it's just a developer, but these are messages left by in-game characters to lead us either astray or to tell us what's going on, and sometimes these messages can really have deep meanings, and I think it's a cool feature. Again, it really showcases the connection between Black Souls and Dark Souls, which is awesome. But for now, we keep going. So I make sure to check my inventory where we find some black ash. If we use this, we can return somewhere. And now we find ourselves in a new location. Library of Dream. On the ground, there's some herb flasks, but if we walk around the room, we'll uncover a few interesting things. For one, there is a bonfire, again, same as Dark Souls, but also more of these messages. There is mentions to us being a hollow, which is exactly what we were in Dark Souls, but also there is a teddy bear. If we interact with him, he is going to be a merchant or vendor of sorts. We can go to him if we really need any items, but for now, this location doesn't offer much else for us to find. So our other option for now is to use the bonfire, which can teleport us back to the Crash Chamber. The library also holds another locked door, just like in the first game with that library, but above it there's also 10 torches. Now, these torches will get lit every time we take down one of the boss fights in the game, though I didn't know this at the time, and this is extremely important because these torches will determine also what kind of endings we can get, and also, based on how many of them are lit, it will lock you out of certain events in the game. So for now, though, the only thing we can do is head back to the Crash Chamber. What the actual just happened? This is one of many weird little jump scares in this game. Would I say that Black Souls is a super scary game compared to, I don't know, your Mask at Horrors? Well, no. It doesn't have that many jump scares, though there are quite a few in this game compared to the first one, and overall the vibe of this game is a little bit worse. But now the door is open, so we can keep making progress. We are warned about falling ahead, so I do try to fall, and yes, there is fall damage, which does end up getting me killed. Then we find a blood trail, and amongst the messed up RPG Maker graphics, we enter the other side to find this. There's a bunch of doors slamming, the music is really intense, there's blood everywhere, and before you know it, we meet a new NPC, Cheshire Cat.
Thin vertically, narrow horizontally, roundish Wonderland with no up or down. Where are you in such a hurry to go?
Well, the only option we can give is that we're going to Alice.
You say all lice? For now, you'll be fine, just walk around as you please. You'll get there someday. Though, if you take the red door, maybe you'll drop dead. My condolences, the Cheshire Cat never learned how to take responsibility.
That was weird. So, this Cheshire Cat is the same one from Alice in Wonderland, except this one has boobs, because it's Black Souls. Of course, she's gonna have boobs. But besides that, she is essentially that same cat, and even if you do not know about it, you may have seen in the Disney movie how the cat is sort of almost creepy at times, weird, but also chaotic or a little mischievous and leading you in strange ways, and it does a similar thing here as well. With our conversation finishing up with Cheshire Cat, we can now keep exploring. We do encounter our first few fights here, but I will talk about the combat changes that have happened in this game a bit later, because there are some genuinely interesting and cool improvements they've done, but also some changes that I didn't like as much. However, as we keep exploring, eventually we run across a weird set of doors. If we keep entering them, we eventually reach a white fog. If you may remember, the white fog in Dark Souls is what you go through before a boss fight. And on the other side, we find ourselves the headhunting beast. Though it first looks as just a rabbit, we quickly will discover that it's more than that. This is a strange beast that will transform the further we take down its health. However, I do not end up winning the first time. You see, Black Souls wants you to grind. It's a game that requires you to grind. It's a game that demands you to do a lot of grinding, and I will tell you, if you're not in the mood for it, you probably shouldn't even try the game, because there is so much grinding that needs to be done in this game to make really any progress. I mean, outside of the grinding, there is also a lot of lore that can be found here. For example, on one of the shelves, we can find a book of swords by Scribe Uric about the Third Chivalric Order of Windsor, which got nearly annihilated. Basically, this is an army that was sent to look for their prince, but in the process of doing so, they had to enter Wonderland, down this rabbit hole that we are currently within, and at doing so, they nearly got annihilated because of all the bizarre and insane creatures found down here. It's interesting to see, but it cuts off, and we don't really learn exactly what happened to these guys, but the fact that there is a book written, and that the text goes, no, 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 save me, doesn't bode well. But if we go back towards where Cheshire Cat is, we can speak to her again, and this time she actually offers us an item to choose from. The options are plentiful, like the Ring of Life and whatnot, but I go for the Master Key because it allows us to open any door at least once. With the key, though, we can enter the rabbit hole. Now, this place is filled with headless knights, and for the most part, there's nothing particular we're looking for inside of here, but where it leads to. And also, there's a mention of something known as a nightmare spirit. Now, we have yet to see one of these nightmare spirits, but they're similar to the phantoms, which are essentially invaders in your realm of sorts in Dark Souls. They will invade you and attack you, and they're tied to a mechanic which we have yet to explore fully. In one room, we find a bunch of statues, or pin-up statues of sorts, which teleport us to strange rooms where we're seemingly stuck. Each one of them takes us to a different place, and it all seems a little bizarre. Heading north, though, we can find a warning telling us there is no rabbit before finding an elevator. This one will take us down into a new location known as the Fuming Forest, but I quickly learned that this place is probably not up to my level yet, or rather, I'm not up to its level, because we get completely stomped. So, back to the crash chamber we go, where we find a room with a liquid inside of it that says, "Drink me," which is a little suspicious. But if we actually consume it, we turn tiny, and we can now crawl through a crack in the wall, leading us to the Pond of Bloody Tears. Again, a truly distraughtful place honestly. But we do meet the Cheshire Cat here, and she mentions some titty bird as a character we'll meet later. But yeah, she doesn't seem very friendly, and she actually kind of reminds me a little bit, the Cheshire Cat, of none else than Mary Sue. You guys may remember her, Leaf, from the first game, where she's kind of making constantly snarky comments, so it's a weird parallel between the two of them. So, since most of the paths were basically dead ends, the only thing I had left to do was to go and face the headhunting beast again, and the second attempt is where this game's progression system truly shines. You see, Black Souls 2 mimics Dark Souls in the best of ways, and that's through the progression. Dark Souls is of course all about learning how an enemy functions, learning the zones, and getting stronger through grinding. And getting stronger is the easy path, but learning a boss is the other half of the game. Black Souls nails that same feeling. Even the turn-based gameplay, you can still feel how an enemy works, what their weaknesses are, and how to beat them. The same elements that Dark Souls has, it translates perfectly here. Grinding, of course, is inevitable in this genre. I mean, you kind of have to do it, but it still feels like you're progressing. And that was something I think Black Souls 1 did really well. Every death in Black Souls 1 gave you a Black Soul, which then boosts all your stats. And that's still here, except now it comes with a catch. A new mechanic called Sen, which I'll dive into properly later, but that core mechanic and that core feeling of constantly getting stronger is still just as good. And now that we figured out the beast, we can take him down, and strangely, no fairy tale drops after beating him, which kind of threw me off a loop for a bit. I kind of expected one, like in the first game. Maybe I missed it, but no, there's no fairy tale. And the messages on the ground congratulate me, same as Dark Souls. Another nice little connection between the games. Now it's time to head into a brand new zone. But first, you should subscribe. If you don't subscribe, the frog dies. Actually, before we go into the next zone, we do return back to the Library of Dreams, where we are going to meet someone new. This right here is the White Rabbit Node. She says it's a pleasure to meet us and refers to us as Lord Blue, which is odd. She's the librarian here and serves us. She's here to help us and, I guess, guide us towards our goal, which I assumed was to find Alice, but she mentions 4 nightmares, which instantly sounds like the 4 princesses from the first game. One of them is the Fruminous Bandersnatch, the Mad Bird Jub Jub, and the Corpse Dragon Jabberwock. These are all references to creatures from fairy tales, but the last one is the Queen of Hearts, which is the antagonist of Alice in Wonderland. Now, these 4 serve as our goalposts. They're the targets we need to hunt down, and similar to the first game, Node herself is actually going to be our level up merchant or prayer master. There is also the ability to join a covenant here with Node, and covenants serve as almost like a faction type deal from like the Dark Souls games, where you can join into a covenant of sorts to gain boosts or side quests, and it's the same thing here. You get stat boosts by joining into a covenant, and the more you level up a covenant by giving more and more souls, the more access you get to things that, well, let's just say are more adult in nature. But this also brings into debate the whole sexual violence part of these games. And I've already spoken about this in my first video quite a bit, but I will bring it up here again because I do think that it has a place in this game. Now, we have the ability to join into a covenant with Node, but also to do this with Node. I'm going to cut from this really quickly because here's the deal. The ability to take advantage of certain characters is in the game, and I'm gonna be honest, I hate it. I hate that this is a part of the game, but at the same time, it does fit the narrative of this game, which is of a twisted, fucked up, dark fantasy world where doing these kinds of things is par for the course. But at the same time, this specific ability, this specific thing being able to be done to different characters is also tied heavily into the big mechanic of this game, which is Sen. I will talk more in detail about Sen as a feature the further in we get, but just know that your Sen value, the higher or lower it is, will actually change how the world works, how NPCs appear, different quest lines, and even completely lock you in or out of different endings. So just keep in mind that this is an important feature, and it is tied to you doing this thing to certain characters. But I do kind of still feel like it's disgusting and disturbing, but at the same time, it's not something you necessarily have to interact with it's something you choose to interact with. Either way, we'll have the philosophical debate about this later. For now, though, we meet Rabbit Knight Vernai. He has an entire quest line we can join with him if we want to, where we speak to him, and he also refers to us as an undead, which is exactly what we are. We are neither living nor dead at this point. We're somewhere in the limbo between.
I finally escaped my hometown. I cannot afford to remain here forever and ever. My dream has only just begun.
Given that we cannot really do much else with Vernai, we instead head out past the point where the headhunting beast was, entering Lutwidge Town. This is our next location, and there's a few things that I haven't really mentioned, which is, for example, if we search corpses, that actually increases our sen value, which is interesting. I first assumed that sen maybe referred to sanity, but that's an E and not an A, so who knows? But as we are walking here, through one of the mirrors, a giant beast appears and hunts us down. Luckily, though, we get saved in the nick of time by running away and reaching Detective Holmes? I mean, clearly this guy is supposed to be a reference to Sherlock Holmes, I'm guessing, except he's a furry, as far as I can tell, and he tells us some interesting details about this location and what's going on in Lutwidge Town.
That was a close one. I've lived here for ages, but a demon beast this big, that's the first one for me. These days, demon beasts and madmen infest this town. Too many acts, then think instead of thinking than acting. Take my advice. The sooner you leave, the better.
So, now we know that the entire place is overran by demon beasts, the same sort of demon beasts that attacked the kingdom in the first Black Souls game. But the thing is, we can also ask him, where is Alice, or that we're going towards her. He tells us that we can find a tavern down southwest who might have some information about where her whereabouts are. However, he also mentions the cutthroat named Jack the Ripper. Now, obviously, Jack the Ripper is a real-life serial killer, or at least a serial killer existed who went by that moniker by the public. A killer specifically going and killing women of the night. If you guys remember the first Black Souls game, women of the night were present in one of the towns there too. Also, on the way here, we do run into Cheshire Cat again, and she says some interesting stuff.
Building blocks is that one thing no one doesn't get to play with as a kid, right? Trained creativity and imagination will come in use in later works, but this shitty pile of houses upon houses is a real art piece. Meow.
Yeah. I'm not exactly sure what I'm supposed to glean from that information, and this is the whole thing with Cheshire Cat. Sometimes she gives you useful info or items, and other times she just spouts a bunch of nonsense. For now, though, we can explore the actual town itself, and it's filled with lots of different enemies that we can encounter. But if we head down south, we can actually find the sewers, and here there is a really strange frog. If we talk to it and tell him that we're looking for Alice or going to her, asks us if she's our favorite, yeah. Okay. That's, wow. And then he also says she might have been sent off to a slaughterhouse. This frog is fucked up, and if you kill it, it's not even a problem. But for now, we actually explore and we find a few items, and then eventually we exit out and reach the brothel streets. Now, this place is filled with these bizarre beggars and women of the night who are just grotesque, but if we keep looking around, we reach the Tenniel Bridge. Now, the ground says to walk on the right side ahead, but if we speak to one of the characters on the side here, her name is Griffy, but she says something completely different to us, though.
Yo, alone in such a place, are you? The carpenter made this bridge in a hurry, and what that means? Defects. There is a number of holes on it. Can you see them? Those black holes? If you want to be safe, stay on the left, remember? Left, go anywhere but left side and you'll fall.
In the heat of the moment, I decide to just go on the right side anyways, and that was seemingly correct because we find the rabbit key and don't die. On the way back though, I do talk to her and, well, she simply says sorry, that from her side it was the left, and that the way we're walking, we were gonna fall if we're walking the left side. Either way, we're given the option of forgiving her or not forgiving her. If we choose to forgive her, we're given a mysterious shard, which is essentially an item used to reinforce your weapon, so that's pretty nice. Also, once we leave this place, we find a house with something white and sticky outside. Reading the description, it's definitely exactly what you think it is. don't even have to talk about it. Also, the hut here belongs to someone we have yet to meet, so further exploration will lead us to the Park of Fog, which we can't enter yet, and on the other side of the map here of Lutwidge Town, we can find the Mental Ward. Now, this place is going to be an area we're going to spend quite a bit of time inside of. Obviously, there are a bunch of patients in the front. There is even a crestfallen soldier, which reminds me of the crestfallen warrior. But if we speak to the receptionist, she can actually offer us some medicine we can buy. This is prescription drugs, which raise our sen, which is really important to know about because soon enough, you'll understand what this feature is and how it impacts gameplay. We can buy a few of them if we want to, but for now, we actually head over to one of the doors. The message tells us to not give up and then hit the door. If we do this 22 times, the door will open, which, why 22? And on the other side, there will be blood, and the music will change. Everything is a bit different here. On the ground, we also find a message. It's a story about a child, Ugug, who fell from a bridge and appeared to have drowned. Thanks to the god inhabiting the lake, he was miraculously saved, but from that day, thorns began
To appear on his body. At first, thorns were tiny, but as the days went on, they grew larger and more numerous.
This is a story specifically from Lewis Carroll, the creator of Alice in Wonderland. And this specific story in itself is one called Sylvie and Bruno. Ugug in that story is a evil little child from an aristocrat family. He belongs to the Empress, and he's essentially just a hideous little child, an evil little bastard. And, well, here it's just mentioning that he fell off a bridge, apparently, which is interesting. But for now, though, we don't really have much else to do with that story, and instead we keep exploring until we find a room with a lever. If we pull this lever, a new set of creatures appear. The room is dark, but we can see shadowy figures all in front of us. If we somehow manage to get past them, outside there is another one. However, now we get to see what it is. These are the nurses. Frankly speaking, they're kind of impossible to kill for us at this level, so we do quickly die to one. But for now, we're going to try to avoid them and see how far we can get inside the mental ward. Yeah, that was weird. Your eyes did not deceive you. There were two creepy little girls, like something out of The Shining. And if we go through here, it seems like we're walking on the wall itself. All these doors seem to be mostly locked, and it truly feels like we're going through some psychological horror type shit, which mostly is the case here. Eventually, though, we do find a hallway, and these doors are a little bit more complicated to deal with. You see, each door kind of works like a bit of a teleporter. It all returns you back to your beginning spot. So you kind of have to go to the right door in the right order to find the actual path you need to head in. There's also a message telling us to use Unseen Pepper, and this is because Unseen Pepper essentially makes you invisible, right? You're not seen by enemies. One of these enemies is this giant, tall woman, which, if she sees us, will sprint at us like there is no tomorrow. So we definitely got to avoid her. And same thing goes for most of these enemies. We are nowhere, like, even close to strong enough to actually beat any of them. There are, quote-unquote, endless hallways with mannequins bleeding. We also do find a cool weapon here, Han's machine gun, which is a great weapon, by the way. But other than that, it's kind of hard to make any progress here at this point in our journey. Mostly because all the enemies, like the neurosurgeon here, are extremely powerful and will one-shot us very easily. So, since the mental ward is sort of out of our realm of, well, attainability, we can instead explore further of the town and find the Charles Tavern. Now, this place has a lot of interesting characters. One of them is the bunny girl Mary. Now, if we tell her we're looking for Alice, she'll tell us that she knows of her, a blonde girl. I mean, hey, look, finally somebody has some info. She does tell us if we want to know more about it, we're gonna have to head over to her hut. You guys may remember we've already seen that hut, so at least we know where to go now, I guess. But she's not the only interesting characters. There's a few more here we can talk to. Like, for example, Chick Rost, who's a random chicken half man guy, and he really wants to be eaten. So that's something. And can also speak to a dog called Sergeant Gilbert, which is kind of a cute name. He talks about the water being polluted, and also Bacchus, which I think is like a Greek god who loves to eat a lot. But either way, it doesn't really tell us much more important stuff. Like, none of the characters really do much information except this thing. It's called Failure, and it repeats the words pa 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 pa. It's not hard to defeat whatsoever. We can take it down in one shot, and killing it, we get an item called Girl's Scent. Now, this is a weird item that I think pretty much just restores our health. and it's not really something we have a struggle with finding, but the battle was just weird to begin with. Why was this thing here, and why was it called Failure? It felt really out of place. The other characters don't provide much of information, so instead we head back to the streets. This time we can head towards the west side of Lutwidge Town, which will also lead us to the Dodgson Bridge. This place looks fine until we see a fog gate. This means a boss fight is waiting for us, but the one that we're going to encounter is this giant beast. Now, this thing is the Beast of Distraction, and you'll notice it looks kind of like a messed up porcupine. This is most likely Ugg from the story from the mental ward. Now, we're not strong enough to defeat him yet, and we'll speak more about him once we refight him, so for now, I simply can only do one thing, which is to grind levels. I do this by taking on a bunch of these weird gentlemen outside of one of the starting bonfires of Lutwidge Town. It takes a while to take them all down, but eventually I encounter someone much worse. This creature hunts me down, and it's the kidnapper. Now, I make the assumption here that the kidnapper, well, maybe he is Jack the Ripper. Or maybe not. But the strangest things happen when he kills us. The screen goes black for a very long time, and we appear in the slaughterhouse. See, when he kills you, you don't simply just die. He brings you down to his little hut, his little home, the slaughterhouse itself. It is filled with all manner of creatures that will try to kill you. There's even a bunch of hanging pig corpses. It is disturbing and disgusting to say the least, but further exploration would lead us to a room that contains a person we will recognize. First of all, there is a bonfire, and there she is. It is once again Cheshire Cat, and this time she has a disturbing tale to tell us of. How some children play at slaughtering.
One day, two brothers saw their father killing off a pig. They imitated what they saw, and the older brother, the butcher, killed his younger brother, the pig. Their mother, who was giving a baby bath, heard her child scream and abandoned the baby in the bath. When she saw what her eldest child had done, she took the knife out of her younger son's throat and in her rage stabbed her older son in the heart. When the mother found out what meanwhile the baby had drowned in the tub, she felt an inconsolable desperation and committed by hanging herself. After a long day of work in the field, the father came home, finding out that his whole family was gone. He soon also went mad and died. Who would have thought up such a cruel and crazy story, meow? Must have been the devil himself.
Now, the story she just recounted is one by Jacob Grimm, one of the Grimm's brothers. It's a tale literally known as How Some Children Played at Slaughtering, and it's one that they actually removed from editions of their Grimm's tales because of how just messed up it was. It's quite literally a tale that was too dark, and they themselves didn't see any moral in the story. There was no moral to it, and Cheshire Cat is just here mocking us with it. It's weird. The reason for bringing it up, I truly don't know. Why it's being brought up? Again, no clue. But seeing any reference to the Grimm's brothers is interesting nonetheless. Now that we are strong enough, though, we can actually head back to the bridge once again to take on the Beast of Distraction. As I said, this is most likely the reference to Ugg. Remember, what we read inside of the mental ward was that he fell off a bridge. Well, we are on a bridge. He was also filled with spikes, because in the real story, Ugg is a child that simply was, how would I say this in a gentle way? He was ugly, okay? Simply ugly, and he wasn't very much liked by the other children, but he was also very mean because of it. And in the story, he turns into a porcupine, which this creature clearly looks like that as well. However, here, he's been twisted into something far worse than simply just a porcupine. He's a disgusting creature. This time, it does take a while to take him down. We are able to use a variety of different moves, including Gun Break, which is essentially our ability to stop him from using one of his attacks. There are indicators for when he's about to do that, but for now, we're actually able to defeat him after all that grinding. And this allows us to then continue on our path, leading us to the Liddell Cemetery. Now, the name Liddell as a whole is interesting, because Liddell is the last name of a particular person from real life. Liddell Alice. This is the person that Lewis Carroll, the writer of Alice in Wonderland, used as inspiration for his story, and also one of the people he told the story to. We'll talk more about this again further later, but for now, we meet a pumpkin man who seems very happy, and of course Cheshire Cat is here too. Heading towards the west, we can find the bloody Lake of Tears once more, and this time there is another Alice in Wonderland character. The foolish bird Dodo is directly from Alice in Wonderland, and this time the bird is, well, strange to say the least. It's a girl rather than being an actual bird, and we can see a bunch of animals running around it. We're telling her that we're going to Alice, and she says, rice, you say? Because she doesn't seem to know what we're talking about. Now, we can enter into a covenant with the foolish bird Dodo, and if we do end up doing exactly that, we will gain a massive boost in movement speed, actually. She gives a really big buff in that regard. But if we do not talk to her further and leave her, instead we can enter into the torture chamber. Now, this place is filled with, blankly speaking, pretty much just a bunch of guillotines and iron maidens. The ground tells us that we should run fast past them, which is a lie, because you should just be walking past them slowly, because running actually aggroes them. So sometimes the messages on the ground can lie to you. But that's besides the point for now. We actually enter into a new location, the Spore Forest. But before we explore this area or do anything further here, I actually return all the way back towards Node. You see, Node is in a covenant with us, which means that we can also upgrade that covenant if we have more souls, which at this point, I did have a few of them. And of course, upgrading the covenant means we get extra bonuses, and the buff we get from Node actually improves. So we make sure to do that. But inside of the library, there's actually also now a new character. It's this box over here, and if we talk to it, the guy inside of it is called Jack in the Box, and interestingly, he actually will take our souls, not our regular souls, but the ones we get from bosses. You see, if we give him, for example, the headhunting beast's soul, he gives us the Wurple Blade in return, which is pretty awesome. This works exactly like it does in Dark Souls, where if you kill a boss, you get their soul, and you can exchange it, and that's exactly what we did here. With, of course, this in our hands now, I decide, well, you know what, we should check out the Mental Ward again, and this time we actually managed to find the way. See, it's very complicated, but we find this secret door which leads us to the twins room. Now these two are Tweedledee and Tweedledum. Both are characters from, again, Through a Looking Glass and Alice in Wonderland, or all that stuff. You should know them by now. But weirdly enough, here they are actually turned into two girls. You'll notice that every character, whether they be male or female, doesn't really matter. Usually they will turn into girls in this series, but that's besides the point. Now they're talking about just some sort of big bird, some creature that's going to be flying and building a nest. So I make the assumption here that that most likely is a reference to what we're looking for in this Mental Ward, which is the next boss fight. And as such, we go through one of the Mental Ward doors, leading us to a hallway filled with these nurses. We can speed past them, but we do get caught by the neurosurgeon, which is an insanely difficult boss, so we try to run away and make it into the isolation room. Here, there's constant glitching when we're walking up, and eventually we reach the top. Here, the boss fight with the white fog awaits. What's on the other side, though, is a giant bird. This thing attacks us. This is the Great Grey Eagle Edith. It's a very long name, to say the least, and this is an insanely difficult boss fight for us to take on at the moment, which is exactly why we end up dying here, and we cannot beat it. So we have to do something else, which is to once again grind levels. But here's the deal though, as I'm about to do this, I decide to check my inventory and use the Black Souls. Now in Black Souls 1, using these would just raise your stats, like every single stat would go up. But here, I am warned that if I do this, my current Sen will go up. Now, to give you context on Sen, it's a mechanic in this game that basically determines a lot of what's about to happen, okay? The lower our Sen, the world will literally change, and the higher, it looks different as well. Basically, Sen stands for madness, and it determines how crazy our character is. And doing this will literally change how characters look in the game, what enemies appear, and literally give you a completely different view of Wonderland. This is an integral part of the game's plot, because our character is going through something, and depending on how we affect our current Sen value, it will change our perception of everything we see. This is genuinely one of the most interesting and unique mechanics in this game, because it literally changes how you perceive things. I'll give you an example. Remember when we were in the butcher shop, down just looking for, well, a way out, and then we saw those pigs hanging? Well, if we go back there again when our Sen value is negative, we'll see that those were not actually pigs, those were humans. This is just one example, because the other example is, for example, the mental ward. If we go back to the mental ward, this time there are these patients that are running around everywhere. These were not here before. We only saw the nurses, but now it's filled with these patients all over the place. And it's not the only thing. If we want to grind in the game, for example, and get extra levels, well, guess what? A new enemy type appears. It's these weird eyes. I don't even know how to pronounce their names. It's just a jumble of words and letters. But these eyes will give you around 5,000 souls per kill. And guess what? We can actually grind these. We can grind out levels against them. And this was something I accidentally actually ended up discovering when I was just grinding normal levels against normal enemies. And then suddenly I see one of these eye enemies. I kill it and it's easily killable. And it gave me 5,000. I was like, oh my god, that's amazing. So what did I do with this? I grinded more levels. I just went to the next location that might have more of these eyes, and I just killed a bunch of them, and they give me the most amount of levels. But the craziest part still is that these eyes will not appear if you do not have low sen. But then there is the other issue of the sen mechanic. See, it's relatively easy to lower your sen into the negatives with using just black souls or, searching corpses and things of that nature. But to actually increase your sen back up is a completely different story. To do this, you can use two methods. One is prescription drugs. These can be bought in the mental ward from the lady at the reception desk. However, if she is killed, you cannot buy them anymore. Or if you have too much of low sen, she's not there to sell you the drugs. So how would you do it the other way? Well, you can go back to Node at the library and you can take advantage of, Node in this case. The game is basically making sure that you get punished for making certain choices, and you get severely punished. At the end, the game essentially makes it so you are complicit in these acts if you want to see the story. If you want to see the ending, you have to change your sen back and forth. You have to interact with the most disgusting elements of this, at least early on in the game. Because once you get a specific item, you can actually lower and increase your sen freely, but early on, you are forced to essentially interact with this mechanic if you want to be able to make progress and see the story for what it is. You're basically backed into a corner, and that's why it's so disgusting. It doesn't just force you to see awful content, it uses the mechanics of the game to make you participate in them and weaponizes them against you as a player. It is awful. And that's kind of what makes this game so intriguing, I guess, is the fact that while you don't necessarily have to interact with these features, if you want to make proper progress and see everything in the game, it makes you use those features. And it makes you complicit in the disgusting madness of Wonderland. But I digress. For now, though, I have spent a while in the game leveling, but I also decided, you know what, it's about time we do a little bit of exploration. I haven't checked some of the other areas, and I go into one of these elevators when... What was that? Let's go back again. Did you see that? Okay, let's pause. That looks like Alice. And there's blood everywhere. This gave me shivers when I first saw it, because it genuinely felt like a weird little jump scare. And it's not the only one. There will be more things of this nature, as you will see. But for now, we're going to ignore that and instead head back to the mental ward. We are now strong enough to actually take on the Great Eagle Bird. Her name is Edith, as we already know, but this could actually be a reference to none else than, well, potentially Edith Liddell, the youngest of the Liddell sisters, who were inspirations for Alice in Wonderland for the writer Lewis Carroll. But this fight is pretty straightforward. Honestly, it's one of the easier fights because you can purely just damage this thing and take it down, but it does come with a few caveats which I should bring up, which is, in this game, unlike Black Souls 1, we can actually use items and heal ourselves without wasting a turn, which means we can fully heal ourselves before even using an attack, giving us an insane advantage. But not just that, we can even change items, as in change different weapons in and out, which is super integral for later down the line. In this fight, it's not really that necessary. I didn't really use it because you mostly just have to brute force your way through this fight. That's all you can do. But there are some more gimmicky fights later in the game where changing weapons is really integral to the entire way of beating the game. But if we beat Edith, we'll be given, of course, her soul, but also a interesting ring. This ring can actually give us access to another location known as Oxford University. We need this for that point in the game, but instead for now, we simply go back to Tweedledee and Tweedledum. We can now actually enter into a covenant with them, which causes them to start Frenching each other, but I digress, the game is weird, but they do give us a bonus of sorts because we are in a covenant with them, and this bonus can be very useful, and you can switch which bonuses you have just going into your menu. For now, however, we need to make further progress. So one of the best things about Black Souls is that you can go back and just explore things that you hadn't checked before, or even places you have been might have changed. For one, I actually went back to that frog, Skipjack, and I ended up killing him for what he said about Alice, because, you know what, I might as well. The other thing we did was explore and actually find the bunny girl who we had spoken to in the tavern much earlier. However, when we asked her about Alice, turns out she was just lying, and all she wanted was some money so we could, you know, do what bunnies do, I guess, if you want to put it like that. So that's an option. And eventually, though, we do end up finding something far more useful. See, we can go back to Dodo Bird, and she will now enter into a covenant with us, which she wasn't able to do previously. And then if we go back to the Liddell Cemetery and head north, we have two different paths we can take. One of them leads into the Garden of Heart, and this is where we'll run into the Gate Soldiers, which are these, like the ones from Alice in Wonderland, the ones that looks like literally a deck of cards. They'll be blocking our path, and we technically need a key to enter here. We need to show them a pass of sorts. However, I decided to kill the guys, because why not? But the other path we could have taken was inside of the mansion itself. This is a big cathedral building, and it's filled with all manner of creepy monsters and stuff, and there's also a really misleading message on the ground here, which I believed, and I fell to my death. But whatever, we actually find a lever which leads us down into a basement. This place is filled with, again, all kinds of enemies, but the coolest thing about these enemies is that they are essentially like the skeleton enemies from Dark Souls. And the reason I say this is because the Dark Souls skeleton enemies are famously known for not actually dying once you defeat them in battle. If you take one down, they'll just reassemble themselves back again and attack you once more. So even if you kill them, they only stay down. They don't actually stay fully dead. Find the lever down here, which will grant us access to a secret room. If we enter this room, we will uncover the Serpent God's altar. And right here, we will witness a conversation between two people.
Miss Griffey, do you have some business with me today? Hey, Bill, you've gotten very cute while I wasn't around. No, it's nothing big. It's so tiny, it's barely enough to roast a tiny bug. The thing is, there's not enough jurors. Maybe you can work as one. If you don't mind, you've done it once before, right? It's gonna be fine. Haven't you asked me that already? And I think I'll give you the same answer. Have I? Guess I forgot it all, huh? So, can you maybe tell me your answer one more time? I will no longer follow the cause of Her Majesty the Queen of Hearts.
So the conversation we just witnessed was between Lizard Bill and Griffey, which we've already met before as well. It turns out that the Queen of Hearts, one of the people we are after, by the way, because we need to take down 4 evil entities, she's one of them. Turns out she's been holding a court, and this court has been banishing people, all kinds of people, to essentially go to the slaughterhouse, where they end up becoming shish kebabs. And in this case, Lizard Bill doesn't want to take part in it. Next up, we actually are able to keep the ladder steady for her, and in doing so, she seems actually happy with us. Oh, and for some reason, we're given the option to peek, which, let's just not do that, shall we? We do speak to her a little bit, and in the process, we tell her who we are. She tells us she's the Serpent God, or teaching the Serpent God ways, and as such, she is the maiden of this place. Also, she tells us about the Queen of Hearts, and that she's not the biggest fan of her. And she gives us the gate pass, which we don't really need anymore because we already killed the guards over at the garden. So, instead, we can simply leave the cathedral and move on to the next place. A place I haven't showed you is Billingsgate Fish Market. We can meet Cheshire Cat here, and to reach this place, we had to just go through the Lutwidge Town. We also meet Knight Vernai here again. He serves a similar purpose in this game, I would say, to something like Solero Vastora, a character that you meet constantly throughout your journey, and if you do not do certain things for their side quest, they may not be someone you meet at the end. It's pretty straightforward, but he is constantly seemingly depressed, and when we tell him that we're an undead, he kind of mocks it a little bit. But given that Billinge Fish Market doesn't hold much for us to find at the moment, we can instead actually head all the way back towards the garden. This time though, we find a secret pathway which leads us to none else than Griffy. Griffy, of course, we've met before, just earlier in the Serpent's basement, but here she's happy to see us, which is always lovely, but she tells us that a brutal demon beast has taken over this garden, and she's asking if we want to join her in this fight. In front of us, there is a creature. This is the Grape Guard Beast. Now, this is based on the story, classic fable by Aesop, The Fox and the Grapes. It is a story about a fox that tries to reach a bunch of grapes, but after repeatedly failing, then it decides to just dismiss them as being too sour and the reason for giving up. It's essentially a story that illustrates how people often pretend to despise things that are beyond their reach, and they do this to essentially just comfort their own ego. And with us defeating it, we also end up getting its fairy tale in the process. Griffy is very happy with this, of course, and she even offers to smooch our character, which happens. But now that we've done this, she mentions that maybe we should work for the Queen of Hearts. Maybe we should work for her master, the Queen of Hearts, of course. And guess what? We actually head straight there because we reach the entrance to Red Castle Fristle, and in front of it, there's also Cheshire Cat.
Meow. Hey, how's everything? Came to deliver your neck to the Queen on your own? I highly doubt such a tyrant has an eye for men. Meow. Do make Alice sad with your thoughtless lust. That is sure to lead to something funny, meow.
Yeah. We ignore her and enter the castle itself. There are proclamations and warnings at the front here. Basically, just exactly what you expect from the Queen. She's gonna behead anyone who questions her, and of course her authority. The hallways do contain the Card Knights though, and I love these guys. I think they're a cool design and concept just in general. And then of course in the Croquet Grounds, we have to do a quick puzzle to gain access to the Atrium. I'm gonna say it right here. The Atrium is directly referencing Sen's Fortress. If you guys have ever, I really mean ever, played Dark Souls 1, you will know Sen's Fortress has these exact sort of things just flying around. This has to be directly based on that. But after a long time of just constantly repeatedly dying to this Atrium, because you have to time your runs specifically, I eventually make it through, and we reach the entrance to a boss fight. The other side contains the Queen's Chamber, and of course, waiting on the throne is going to be the Queen herself. She sits there, and as we ask her, "Are you the Queen?" she answers off with our head. Her name is Lorina. She is the one who's been essentially butchering everyone in Wonderland and sending them to the slaughterhouse. She summons in 3 of her knights, and these are all different knights of spades, knights of hearts, and knight of clubs, and we gotta take all of them down. It's a relatively difficult fight, but if you've done enough grinding, they are not that hard to essentially take down. You can brute force your way through most of them pretty leisurely. However, once we defeat them, we have an option now. We can let her live, we can ask her a question, we can kill her, or we can do heinous things to her. Obviously, my option is just to let her live and even enter into a covenant with her because it's useful. When we ask her about Alice, she tells us that Alice is not in this world. She's somewhere else. What that somewhere else is, we just do not know, but we don't really need her to tell us much, because giving her some tart, she seems happy, and now that we have our covenant, we can instead talk to Griffy outside, who does give us some information about Alice. She tells us where we can find her, telling us that she escaped her execution and was seen fleeing the castle and running towards the city. So, at least we know where to go now. To start with, we're going to be heading to the Spore Forest. This is going to lead us straight to the next boss fight, but before we enter it, we can summon a Dream Spirit to join us in a fight, and that being, I think, the Pumpkin Knight here. Now, Dream Spirits are essentially like summons in Dark Souls, and this time, we're going to get the help of one to take on the Knight in Armor. This guy is some sort of cat knight, at least based on the meow at the end there, but I do like the idea of having summons in this game work differently than how you had party members work in Black Souls 1. See, summoning in this game is just like summoning in Dark Souls. A person joins you temporarily for a fight and gives you a little bit of help. They don't make the battle super easy for you, they just give you a little bit of an extra boost, which I think is the perfect way to balance it, because having a broken party in Black Souls 1 made the game relatively straightforward and easy. Here, being only you makes it much harder, but also more rewarding when you do get a bit of help to boost you through a fight. So, as we take down this knight, we can now enter the mansion. This place is creepy, but what waits for us right away is a disturbing fight. This is the butler. He is a nightmare spirit. Essentially, he appears just like other nightmare spirits to take us on whenever our sen value is up or down. And in this case, the guy's name is Archibald. Now, the fight is almost impossible for me to take on at this point, but his name stood out, and he's not the only one. Every single nightmare spirit's name is very intriguing because they're all references to serial killers. And this one in particular could be a reference to Archibald Hall, a man born in Glasgow, Scotland, that became famous and known as the Killer Butler, or sometimes referred to as the Monster Butler, as he committed several crimes while working as a service member of sorts. And here, he appears in front of us. The game has a weird way of concocting together fairy tales, real-life criminals, the most disgusting things you'll ever see, all into one. And I think this is one of the moments where I felt the most off-put, because this is a real guy that did real horrific things, and now he's appearing as some form of character in this game. It does take you a second if you realize it right off the bat, but it is disturbing nonetheless. The rest of the mansion is honestly also disturbing. There are spider enemies that just creep you out. There are several traps and things along the way that just make it hard to get through this area. But there's also a peculiar picture. Inside of it, there's a few things, or two things that stand out, clearly, but also Pumpkin Knight. He's in this picture, and he's alongside what seems to be the Duchess of this mansion. So clearly they're related. Actually, they're technically married, I guess. But not anymore. They seem to have split up somewhat. We also see a cat in the picture, and a dog. One of the hallways also leads us to a very strange location. You see, taking these stairs, we find what I can only describe as a otherworldly entity in the basement. A giant, just bizarre, almost Lovecraftian creature awaits in front of us. The infinite food. And it's sleeping. We're allowed to enter the body. At least, we seem to be able to. So we do exactly that. Now, the other side contains something I did not expect. It is a happy-go-lucky place. I mean, it is, again, filled with all manner of enemies and creatures, but it's a place filled with tarts and cakes and just beautiful food in the gullets. It's weird, to say the least. But it's also kind of funny. The juxtaposition of this giant creature that looks like something out of Lovecraft's mind, and then this cute, beautiful, pumpkin patch-looking place. It's just, I don't even know how to describe this. I think the only messed up thing down here has to be the boss fight, which is against a creature that, I shit you not, is called Pregnant Cake. Yeah. I guess this creature gives birth to other cakes? I'm not even going to elaborate on this, but again, back to my point. The game loves to just twist your mind constantly, taking you from disturbing, off-putting to sometimes goofy and funny, to then this. It is just so strange, and it makes Black Souls into one of the most unique games that you can possibly play. But the gullet and this place, the infinite food, isn't necessarily where our task awaits us. We actually have to head back into the mansion, and we find some respite and a bonfire right next to Cheshire Cat in one of the rooms, before eventually finding the fog gate to the next boss fight. On the other side awaits us a battle against the Duchess herself.
Speak roughly to your little boy and beat him when he sneezes. He only does it to annoy because he knows it teases. I speak severely to my boy. I beat him when he sneezes, for when he can thoroughly enjoy the pepper when he pleases. Tear, 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 rip, grip, munch, crunch.
So we're prompted with a few options when it comes to her. We are able to tell her that we're looking for Alice, but this just causes her to go into a frenzy and attack us, which, to be honest, we are not able to beat this fight, and we get swallowed whole by her. Instead, we return, and this time we calm her down, which actually lets us negate the entire boss fight. We don't actually have to do it, which is way nicer because she's hard to beat. By offering her some meat, she actually seems much happier with us, and thanks to this, we're able to ask her a few questions.
Well, you are searching for Alice, yes?
How does she know this? It's a bit strange, but yeah, we are.
It's because I'm quick of hearing, and the moral of that is, rumblings of insects turn rumors on the wind, which then become news.
Okay, seems like she has some information to share. Well, what could it be? It tells us that the blonde girl has lost her way in the Looking Glass land, but she also tells us that her overflowing curiosity led her to that place. Basically, she's at an amusement park ruled by the Red Queen known as Queensland. If we ask how we get there, well, we learned that it's not that difficult. We have to head to the Lake of Bloody Tears and find a mirror at the bottom of it. Going through that mirror, we can reach a train station. This train station will allow us to get to Queensland. We're also actually given a ticket to get there, which is going to be very useful. She also confirms that the Red Queen is terrifying, no less so than the Majesty of Hearts. But if we're gonna save Alice, we have to go there. And we now know where our next destination is. So, the Pond of Bloody Tears is where we're headed. Now that we can head down to the Pond of Bloody Tears, we have to walk straight down south to reach the next boss fight. Now, the game tells us to dash through here, but that's a lie, because you're gonna get instantly attacked by the Iron Maidens. Instead, walking slowly is the best course of action, and as we reach the front entrance, a fog gate awaits us. This fight actually is super important in my opinion, because it was the first fight where I had to learn how to use the equipment system. You see, up until now, you've been able to force your way through and brute force your way through in most battles, but in this one, even though I did a bunch of grinding before taking on this fight, and I had to repeatedly try it because I would just die to this thing, I actually had to learn something new. You see, right here in this moment, you can see a kind of aura around the enemy. We have to use Gun Break, which essentially breaks down a special attack that's about to happen from the target here, this giant Queen of Torture. But these attacks, when they do hit, like right here, insta-kill you. They are super powerful, but how do you deal with them? Well, obviously you can break them using Gun Break, but another thing you need to learn is what is the weakness of your enemy? Well, in this case, the weakness is pretty much that this thing cannot handle bleed. So I equip a weapon called the Beast Hunter Saw. This thing can cause a bleed attack, and this allows me to essentially do bleed damage consistently because the enemy will constantly heal itself. But with bleed, it cannot handle it. And as such, if I constantly keep switching in and out between my Storm Ruler Blade, which is my strongest weapon, and the Beast Hunter Saw to cause bleeding damage, I can eventually take the Queen of Torture Tools down. And that is what I love about the combat system in this game. The fact that this equipment option to be able to switch between weapons allows for far more strategy, allows you to constantly have to think about, okay, what is this thing strong against? What is this thing weak against? And this battle is just the first example of it. I think the DLC in this game, as there are 3 DLCs, are probably much better. But if we go through the Looking Glass, we find ourselves in a strange forest filled with all manner of just disgusting enemies. There's even a nightmare spirit, this giant thing, which is a bunch of humans amalgamated into a giant blob monster. It's disturbing. But the coolest thing I find is this dragon right here. You see, there's a blade next to it, but there's also some text that says, "This is where you were, my old foe," which made me wonder, is this what I think it is? Because this weapon was formed from the tail of a Hellkaiser. This is the Hellkaiser Drake from the first game, an enemy boss that constantly followed you around over and over again, and right here it is again, and there's a weapon related directly to it, the Drake Sword. It's a cool reference. I like when they do callbacks to the first game. But luckily, we reached the abandoned station, Hanover, which I think is a city in Germany, but nonetheless, once we are here, we encounter a new person. It's Maid Victoria. If you've seen my video on Black Souls 1, you'll remember that she is the maid that we interacted with several times. She worked for the mayor in that game, and then eventually, in one of the endings, we can end up with her. This time, we are given the option of clasping her hands, which I would say don't do it, just leave. Because if you do this, the screen turns completely red, and our next option is not as nice. We have the option of embracing her or leaving, and finally, we can only choose the option of making love. We enter into a boss fight with the lewd demon Victoria, and the options of what we can do here, we cannot do any damage. We can only, for the lack of a better term, pound. A lot of pounding. Ungodly amounts of it, okay? And it gets really intense. I mean, shit like this happens on screen. I'm obviously gonna have to blur it, but still, there's a lot of just messed up shit that goes down. However, in the end, when you think it's over, she doesn't say it's enough. She wants everything.
Heart.
Okay, yeah, that kind of jump scared me when I was playing the game, I'm not gonna lie. It was such a dumb jump scare, it got me killed. So the next time I come around here, I decide, you know what, I am not messing with this girl again. I mean, she wasn't even there. Instead, we meet the black conductor, Hane. This guy is the guy who's gonna be taking us to the Queensland. But first, he actually sells us Black Souls, which are really useful. But on top of that, this guy is actually from the Black Trial from the first game. If you don't remember the Black Trial, they were the people who pretty much served as the ones taking down sinners in that game, like ourselves when we were committing too many sins. But this time around, he's just a conductor for this train, and a pretty chill guy. We reached the cliff of Nightgons, and at this point, I was thinking a bit about the fact that we did encounter Victoria, and how in some way she also suffers as a succubus because it's just her nature. Also, we get picked up by gargoyles, very similar to the scene from Dark Souls 1 when the gargoyles pick you up and take you to Anor Londo, except unlike Anor Londo, which I think is a gorgeous place, the Queensland looks like a circus. Like, quite literally like a circus, I'm not even exaggerating. There's also this camera that points towards something. We're asked to take a photo, and then it asks us what the little girl's face looked like, and it's given us an option of 3. I chose to go for the mother's face, and then we're given a photo. Other than that, there is a Neko statue, which we can spam to get 1 soul per every click, so that's a thing. It's kind of funny more than anything, to be honest with you. And now it's time to explore the actual Queensland itself. The Red Queen is the centerpiece of the park, but we're not going to be going for her. We're looking at the thing here, and there is the Queen's Castle, the Lovecraftian Cinema Joke Man on the right side, and then there's also the Mystery Maze and Punch and Jude on the left side. I make the decision of going towards the left-hand side of the actual map, and that's because I want to check out this Jude and Punch show. So these 2 puppets are actually based on a real traditional English puppet show, which features these 2 characters, Mr. Punch and his wife Judy, and essentially this puppet is constantly just abusing everyone. He just does bad things, and we're given the option of punishing either side here, which pretty much just consists of watching them blast the other one with more or less a gun. It's extreme, to say the least. It's kind of shocking. The first time it happened, it kind of caught me off guard. And I came back a few times just to see the different kind of options, because you can do this several times. Even the other option here, for example, the wife shoots Punch instead, which is kind of funny. And then the third option is that they both end up being shot. So, yeah. It's super random, super weird, and I just thought it was interesting to see this added into the game. It's such a random thing, and it's an interesting reference. I never knew anything about these 2. However, when I go back to the Library Dreams where I wanted to get some levels, I noticed that Node, the rabbit who gives us our levels, has moved position. She's standing in front of the door that's been locked, and above her, all 10 of the lights have been lit. What this means is that we might now be able to enter the other side. And so when we speak to her, she tells us that she saw a cat carrying a girl. A cat. The only cat we know of has been the Cheshire Cat. Apparently, she saw her going inside of the door with a little girl. That pretty much tells us it's most likely Alice. So at this point, I start questioning the Cheshire Cat very much so. However, it's now time to actually enter the other side. Upon entering through, the message on the ground tells us to create a separate save. pretty much confirming that what's ahead of us is one of the game's endings, most likely. There's a long hallway, so we decide to ascend upon it. We enter the world's dream, a cosmic space with the only thing standing in front of us being a door. Entering it, we reach the child's room. It's possibly Alice's room. There's a bunch of teddy bears everywhere. It's a blue bear, a yellow bear, and a red bear. And in the corner, someone waits for us. It's Cheshire Cat. So, we speak to her.
I died not long after giving birth, so the only Alice I remember is a little girl. Still an innocent little girl, unchanged from those days. I know the warmth of her hand very well. A single brush of it against my fur would remind me that I'm a prided pet cat. You aren't the only one eager to meet Alice. It's a shame. I really am sorry. Dreams and lies are no different to me. I'll be waiting for you past the door.
And so she vanishes. On the wall, there is a picture. It's a man, woman, and a blonde-haired girl. Possibly Alice's father and mother. But we can't linger on that, because in front of us, a fog gate awaits. So, we traverse through it. Walking through the void, there's nothing except Alice.
Blue, no, don't come.
Something appears in front of us. Tearing Beast Dinah appears. This is the Cheshire Cat. The one that we've seen throughout the game, and it appears as a disgusting beast. I think the art on it is really cool, but I wasn't prepared for this kind of boss fight. It's so much harder than I expected, and also I was still very inexperienced with using the gun break in the game. As such, we end up dying.
Blue, no, this can't. I'm sorry. Please forgive your foolish mother. I couldn't do anything to protect you. Well, kill me if that's what you want. I'm not scared of someone like you. Wait for me, Blue. Mother will be with you soon.
Sounds of claws biting into flesh, a sea of fresh blood spreading into the dark beyond. In our fading awareness, we hear Mother's quiet agony, and then silence falls upon two corpses.
So, we just died. And Alice just died. And that was one of the game's endings. Yeah, I shit you not. That was ending C. And at first it might seem like, okay, well, that's nothing that crazy. I mean, it's one ending. You end up dying against the boss fight. Of course, that means that if we beat her, we're going to get a different ending and things are going to look different, right? Well, here's the deal. To get those endings, we need to get stronger, but also, at this point, I was able to get endings so quickly, I didn't even realize that there are still so many places I'd yet to explore. So I decided, before I go and try to get the next endings instantly, I need to do a little bit more exploring, a little bit more grinding, and also a little bit more time looking into what the hell just happened. Because this fight was bizarre. It was so weird. I needed to figure out how to beat this thing. One peculiar thing, though, is that now that we've finished the game, we are sent straight back to where we were before. And there's also a crystal which asks us if we want to transition into the next cycle, where we will keep our levels and our equipment, but we're going to have to reset the story. This is confirming a suspicion that we've had since, the first game, and something that's also common in Dark Souls, which is the concept of repetition. Constantly repeating the same cycle and the same mistakes over and over. The ending we just saw, what we just experienced, a Groundhog's Day type scenario. We are living through the same shit over and over again, probably making the same mistakes over and over again. This wasn't a true ending. This was just another day in the cycle. We need to find a way out, to break the cycle somehow. Otherwise, this crystal wouldn't be here. But also, the crystal serves sort of like a New Game Plus type of scenario, because you essentially get to restart from the beginning, but you get to keep a lot of your powers and stuff. There's even another statue inside the exact same room where you could increase the difficulty if you want to make stuff harder for yourself. It's cool mechanics, and it does give a lot of replayability to this game, because I spent well over 40 hours in this game getting footage and just playing through, trying to get as many endings as I possibly could within a reasonable amount of time. In the Queensland, we can enter a circus of sorts where this clown can be found. At first, I didn't really think much about it, that, I would just follow him over and over again until eventually he jump scares and attacks me. This is the killer clown Gacy, and he's specifically based on John Wayne Gacy, an actual serial killer who killed loads of people, specifically young men, back in 1972 until 1978 in Chicago, Illinois. It's, again, really weird to see this, and I end up losing against him, but yeah, just knowing that most of these, I guess, nightmare spirits are all essentially serial killers, is still very off-putting. But for now, though, we don't really have much else to find in the Queensland, so instead I'll go back to the slaughterhouse. Here we can run into a brand new boss fight. Now, this guy is some sort of butcher down here. He's been the one carving up all the people that have been sent down into the slaughterhouse, and he's the beast-clad butcher. Now, taking him down is not particularly hard, but what's important is once we beat him, we can enter a new location known as Carroll River. Now, this could also be a direct reference to Lewis Carroll again. His name shows up several times, as you may have noticed. This river has a variety of enemies, but they're not the important thing. There are two things we'll find here that are very, very important to where we need to go next. First of all, we'll meet the cat once more. This time, the Cheshire Cat is just giving us information about a particular person, that being a dragon. In this case, Jabberwock. Remember, the Jabberwock is one of the 4 people we were told to take down as our way to finish the game, as our way to get Alice back. The 4 evil beings. So far, we haven't really encountered much of them, but this is meant to be the location of one of them. If we go down into this one basement, this is a basement that also belongs to Jabberwock. This is her basement. This is her prison. But she's not here. Instead, crossing a bridge, we find ourselves right next to Vernai again. The Rabbit Knight is here, and this is probably going to be the last time we'll see him because he can join us in whatever fight awaits us. If we cross the bridge, we are able to actually summon none else than Patriche. Patriche is the story of a boy and his dog of Flanders. This is a actual story from the first game where Patriche is a villain and boss fight. But here, Patriche joins us as a summon, which is really weird. So when we beat the giant troll monster dragon thing on the bridge, we can go across the other side and we can find...
No need to push it. Take turns. Our family, all of us, loved by you.
It's Jabberwock. She pretended to be Alice, messing a bit with us here. But there she is. That is the corpse dragon Jabberwock who's causing trouble. She, of course, is a sort of benevolent creature within the stories that are written by Lewis Carroll. She essentially serves as a obstacle. Not necessarily evil always, but definitely not good either. And here, this thing is, well, it's mocking us, to say the least. Jabberwock will give us a few options. We can mess with her, we can try to kill her, but I'll be honest, fighting her in a boss fight is very difficult. She's very hard to beat, very difficult, but we can also join into a covenant if we really wanted to. However, the worst option, the one that requires you to do unspeakable things to Jabberwock, that's the one which ends us in the worst possible location. We're now in a prison cell, the same one we saw earlier, owned by Jabberwock. She will then take turns constantly abusing our character. And when I say abusing, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm not going to go deep into it, but she definitely went deep into something. But either way, she'll constantly keep abusing us until she eventually reveals some interesting plot points through these scenes. Those plot points I'll talk about in just one second, but first, this is yet another example of how this game uses the worst elements you can possibly imagine to force you to get lore, okay? Like, obviously you can learn some stuff just from assumptions, but purely here, if you wanted some lore, you had to go the worst possible route and see the worst things imaginable to be done by humanity and or dragons in this case, to be able to learn what it's all about. It's genuinely just insane. But back to what she has to say, though. She mentions the following.
Big Sis will be keeping you here forever. That's alright. You don't need to go through any more cycles. You don't need to look for Alice anymore. You don't even need to serve the selfish great ones anymore. They only see you as a stuffed toy that somehow grew up anyway, you know? Masquerading as your beloved females, tempting and using you to breed the moment you give in. So hateful, so scary, aren't they? But with Big Sis, you won't have to suffer it. We haven't been found out yet, have we? So we still have time, right? Until she comes. Big Sis will be carrying her mark deep into your body. Ah!
And suddenly, she's gone, and we're now free to walk around again. A bit shocking, surprising to say the least, but we're able to escape. So now let's talk a little bit about what she just said. Number one, she mentions the Great Ones. We kind of can surmise that this is probably some greater beings, the creators of this world, similar to how Leaf and her mother function in the first game, if you don't know about that. The Great Ones function similarly to eldritch beings from something like H.P. Lovecraft's world. For example, the infinite food here, when we encounter it in a boss fight later down the line, essentially works in that kind of way. A being so grotesquely big, controlling so much power, being so old and forgotten by time, and so messed up that it's kind of hard to wrap your head around it. Think Cthulhu or something like that. It's something that if you try to understand it, you will go crazy. It's beings so beyond us that they're impossible to grasp at. That's essentially the feeling I'm getting, or the vibe at least I'm experiencing from this. But for now, we're going to keep exploring a bit further because there's a few places we still need to check out, very importantly, before everything truly starts getting revealed to us. One of these undiscovered locations is by heading north into Lutwidge Town and reaching the Park of Fog. This place can be annoying to traverse since you need to follow these light poles to get you to the other side. And if you walk out of bounds, you get teleported all the way to the back. And of course, there are the occasional enemies along the way to block you, making this similar to Sen's Fortress, where basically they add some sort of movement-based obstacles along the way to block you. We also encounter the Cheshire Cat, and she's bored and wants to play a game. Doing so will end up with her showing a child's drawing, and it looks like Alice, and oh my god, it's a jump scare. Now, why is there such a large quantity of these in the game? I don't know, but I do think that they happen a lot more than the first game. I feel like the first game didn't have this many jump scares necessarily. They do catch you off guard though. Once we manage to get out of the Park of Fog, with a lot of trial and error, we find ourselves in Upper Lutwidge Town. This place is crawling with, for the lack of a better term, I'm gonna say, women of the night. I guess that's the best way to refer to them. But these women are trying to come after us, so we have to wiggle our way through them. In one of the brothels, we find a room. If we speak to the person on the other side of the door, it's a boy who keeps saying that someone is out to get him. If we interact with him a few times, it's revealed to be the Madness Spirits, this time belonging to the story of the boy who cried wolf. It's a story that I think is always taught a good lesson, that lying repeatedly and playing with people's trust in you will eventually lead them to not trust you when there is a true moment of trouble that occurs. And right here, people clearly do not trust this kid because he's a big fat liar. But for now, however, we can head further up north where we encounter another woman of the night, but she gets completely crushed to death. And in front of us stands the detective, Holmes. But he reveals something interesting to us here. It turns out he was Jack the Ripper all along. The man tasked to find the serial killer was him all this time. It has actually long been rumored that the real Jack in real life was most likely a police officer due to his ability to always slip away and stay out of the way of the police patrols and particular way that they were looking for him. So, them taking the most famous detective story of Sherlock Holmes and making him the true villain all along is kind of interesting given that he's a man of great deduction skills and then masquerading and being able to commit these heinous crimes. Lucky for us, he doesn't stand a chance against our Fist of Fury as we're able to take him down in a boss fight quickly. With him defeated, the path leading to Oxford University has fully opened up to us now. So we cross in, but to enter the university, we'll need a peculiar item, which we should be able to have picked up earlier, that being the Ring of Edith, that we received upon defeating the Great Eagle. There is also a path on the right-hand side, which leads us somewhere else. An elevator serving as a shortcut to Carroll River. But with Edith's ring, we can now enter the Oxford University. The enemy encounters here I can only describe as eldritch, Lovecraftian in nature almost. The inside of the university also contains an enemy type called students that sort of reminded me of Alice in its design, but the strangest place is the library that looks exactly like our library hub where we meet Node and do our level ups. It even contains two strange things. Alice? Well, no. Once again, it's a cop-out, and we face off against, Vagina Dentata. So, this is a motif that's used in some folklore and mythological history of a toothed female genital, which was meant to be overcome before the male hero of the story wanted to splash. Kind of messed up, if you ask me. Making women out to be some sort of monster seems kind of just fucked. But in most recent times, it's been sort of a representation of the emasculation or loss of power in the male. But in this game, I would assume it's the image of blind lust that our character Grimm has, right? This constant desire to find Alice and his willingness to do anything to get there. At least that is how I'm seeing it, but maybe I'm just dumb and there's maybe some deeper meaning to it that I do not see. However, killing the Dentata opens a secret passageway, but in the room we also encounter a doll in the shape and design of Alice. A bit creepy, but not that important. Or is it? The secret passage leads to a boss fight in the Dean's room. The Dean could possibly be related to a specific person, the Dean of the real Oxford University. He could also be related to the real-life father of Alice. Now, her dad was the Dean of the University of Oxford in 1855, so in this fight, we seem to be facing off against him. Unlike most bosses, he doesn't speak or say anything, instead just simply fights us. With him defeated, the door behind him opens, leading into the Endless Tea Party. We've seen this tea party before, way back in Black Souls 1, but now there is no one here. No rabbits, nothing. Instead, we enter the clock tower behind the table, which contains several hung NPCs. The further we scale into the tower, we eventually reach a puzzle of sorts, where we need to stop time to allow for our traversal past these very quick enemies that can really take down your health quickly, before finding our next boss fight. This time, it's a bizarre creature. It's called the Beast of the Bright Star, and I thought it could be a reference of some sort to maybe the poem of Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, like the little nursery rhyme, but this time around, this thing is just a grotesque half-octopus, half-skeleton, half-bat monster. And apparently I couldn't really find any references to what it could be. Like, no one online has really mentioned what it could be based on, and I couldn't figure it out myself either. It could just be that the creator, Eeny Meeny Miny Mo, who created Black Souls, just made their own monster here, which I think is cool as well, because it looks just bizarre and fits the world that Black Souls is. But either way, this thing will cast full-on blindness on us, which makes it hard to see anything because the screen turns, well, white, so we cannot tell if the moves or attacks are coming from it at any given time. But by buffing ourselves, it's the best case and chance of us surviving. With the star defeated, though, it takes a bit of time, we can then scale even further, where we find the top of the clock tower. Now, in one of the rooms, there is a painting. It looks like the drawing of Augustus Pugin. I think that's how you pronounce his name. He's a famous architect and probably the one who designed this clock tower in universe as well. So we stare at his photo, doing so long enough, and it changes. He grows older until only a skeleton remains. With its death date in the top right, take a note of it, we can type it into the lock and open a secret passageway once again. At the end of the road upstairs leads to some sort of troll who's been stuck in this hallway for a very long time. In offering to help him out, we push him over and over again until he falls down the other side. Turns out the other end was a dead end with a large drop. At the bottom, we can find his lifeless corpse. In trying to help him, we only cause his sad demise. This is a genuinely terrifying prospect. We just try to help this person, this troll thing, and instead we ended its life. But either way, the next thing we find is a summon for Peter Pan, which surprised me. He was actually a total villain in Black Souls 1, and yet here he's now joining our side? Huh? It's kind of weird. Well, as we walk to the top of the tower, we find one thing. It's Jubjub's nest. Now, this is one of the 4 demons we were meant to hunt down. As we face off against Jubjub, Peter effin' Pan decides to betray us and joins Jubjub instead. Now, this shit caught me off guard, like hella off guard, and I never saw it coming whatsoever. But it kind of makes sense. Peter Pan is a villain, and so here he just joins her because he's just a creep. However, that's fine, because after we lose the fight, we refight her again, but this time without summoning Peter. With her defeated, though, she freaks out and offers to join her in a covenant, but I decide to reject it, and to reject her body, to which she asks me if I have balls. Answer is yes, now die. She does, however, drop the most important item in the entire game, in my opinion, and it is the Gear of Madness. Without this item, I'd say almost like the entire game would be impossible to fully get through very easily and get all the endings without having this, because it makes everything so much nicer and more efficient, because the Gear of Madness lets us move our send value up or down in the game freely without having to use any other items. This just lets us switch it from 0 to 100 whenever we feel like it. So, with this, we can return to the library where we, funny enough, can meet Node again, and she has been nodding off and having a nap. Now, we should also be much stronger to actually be able to take on Dinah and try to beat her in a boss fight, as we failed previously and got the bad ending earlier. So this time, we go back inside, but something is strange. Alice's room this time around is no longer filled with cute dolls and bears. They're all stabbed and there's blood everywhere. If we set our send value back up to high again, the room is back to normal. So this is where you can 100% see the brilliance in the send system. It kind of reminded me a bit of the Other World from Silent Hill, a more fucked up version of the real world. But in Black Souls 2, it's twisted the other way around. When our Sen, or our madness, which is what Sen stands for, is high, we instead see an idealized world, a fake happy world, whereas when our madness is low, we see it for what it really is. A fucked up, horrific world filled with pain, evil, and just fakeness and terrible things everywhere. I love this mechanic. I think this is genuinely one of the coolest mechanics in the game. So with this new knowledge, we now know that if we enter the fight with Dinah, things will be a little bit different. Now, I fully understand the mid-battle weapon equipment switching system at this point. So when we go in, I am much more easily able to take and fight Dinah on, because being able to switch between our weapons allows us to take her down. So after avoiding her one-shot combo, with also Gunbreak coming in clutch, it's still important to be able to defeat her and free Alice, which we end up doing. And then Alice speaks.
Blue, are you all right? You're in so much pain. You worked so hard for your helpless mother. Thank you. You're my pride and joy. We won't ever separate again. Now, should we return to live together forever and ever?
We are prompted with two options. Make love. This one is interesting choice. Or we can kill. Both lead to different outcomes. So we'll start with the love option. I'm doing quotation points when I'm saying this, which goes exactly how you'd expect it to.
You hug your dear Alice tight. You don't want to be separated from her ever again. Blue? That's true. It must have been so hard for you. Sudden realization brings me to a halt. Why haven't I grasped it until now? Where is Alice?
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is ending A, aka the Alice ending. The question he asked at the end was very peculiar, wasn't it? Where is Alice? Didn't we just hug her? I mean, whoever we just found isn't the Alice that we have been seeking for. Or is she? I mean, she wasn't the one. Why would we still be questioning it? And once we do this, we get a cycle that starts once again. We're back in the library. So, what would happen if we instead choose to kill Alice instead? Well, after a fast fight against Dinah again, we try exactly that, which is when something is revealed to us.
Oh, my dear, my beloved, my son, no matter how much affection I gave you, no matter how much I loved you, you still eventually tried to escape from mother's embrace. No, that's no good. There's no escape. You're my son. I birthed you, and I will not let you leave me for any other woman. Locked inside this cage, you'll be with me forever and ever. This is, how'd you put it, fabulous. You'll rest easy inside your mother's womb. Blue? Come to mother. Accept my embrace.
And die. You have to die.
We now face off against the Elk Goddess, or better yet, Yunde, from H.P. Lovecraft's stories. It's an entity from the Cthulhu mythos. She is one of the great ones, the outer gods, and this fight is really hard compared to Dinah, But the biggest thing you need to know about this battle is that it changes based on the first choice we made in the game. See, early in the game, right at the beginning of Black Souls 2, we got to choose who and what Alice we wanted to choose, right? And this one is the mother. But then there's also the sister and daughter, and these determine who you face off against in this exact battle, with the elk goddess manifesting as Mother Alice and doing this because she is a bored god. She's an outer god that simply wants to have fun, and in doing so messed with us by creating these twisted fairy tales. The other two are the Black One and the Shadow Demoness, both of which are terrible creatures bringing nothing but havoc and destruction. With the Elk Goddess being really hard to beat, one of the best moves we have is to constantly buff ourselves with speed, defense, and attack boosts, while also hitting her with several debuffs due to her attack when it does hit, doing a one-shot combo. Also, she doesn't telegraph her moves like some other attacks, so Gunbreak can be harder to hit timing-wise. With her being really difficult, defeating her, nothing happens. There's the one ending called Ending E, or Exclusion, as we don't get a special ending, but everything simply ceases to exist. There's one more regular ending for this one, but to do this one, we need to beat Dinah while having more than 0 Sen. In doing so, and then killing Alice, we will not face the Elk Goddess, but instead, once again just question, where is Alice? This is the final ending of the game. Okay, fine, I get it. There are several more endings, jeez. So, to get these other real or more true endings, we'll need to replay the entire game with some caveats. You see, with our newly found Gear of Madness, we can now uncover a whole side quest plotline, which I completely skipped in any and all of my previous sections of this playthrough. So we restart the game, and this time we reach the gates of Lutwidge Town, where we actually ran into that red monster jumping out of the window, or the mirror. But this time, if our value of Sen is under 0, we'll instead encounter someone new. That is Red Hood. She was one of our important companions in the first Black Souls game, and now she's in front of us. She refers to us as Grimm, which we know is our real name. We are Grimm, a manifestation, amalgamation of several different authors into one singular person who keeps being forced to suffer in this constant series of cycles over and over again.
What's wrong? Wait, do you not remember me?
We answer that we do remember her.
I see. Good. I'm not really here to help you. The mastermind behind it all is in this land. I'm just here to cut off her head.
I already make the assumption as to what the mastermind really is here. Only one person that could be. And, well, when asked if we want to come with Red Hood, we can only answer that we have to look for Alice. Our character is almost cursed to constantly seek out Alice over and over again. Now, this is the start of a very long quest line where we need to run around and seek out Red Hood in several locations to 1, uncover the true story of this game, 2, to gain access to the other endings, and 3, to actually learn who is truly behind all of this. We know the outer gods are involved, but there is definitely some sort of mastermind behind it all, and Red Hood is after that mastermind. Is it her again from Black Souls 1? If you know, you know. Well, only time will tell. So we jump around to all the locations where Red Hood will appear. Next we find her in the rabbit hole, and after exhausting her dialogue, she reveals to Grimm that she was saved by a white rabbit a few times, which makes me wonder if it was Node or not. Then we are allowed to do the unspeakable to Red Hood. Weirdly enough, you need to do it seemingly, at least based on what I could learn about the game, before she moves on to the next location. It was really strange. She will then be found in the Fuming Forest. She seems to not handle the heat well, so she then moves on to Billinchgate Fish Market. Things seem much better for her here. She also mentions Poro, her wolf, but he's nowhere to be seen in the moment right now, which is interesting, because it's a wolf that always sticks with her. Then we find her in the slaughterhouse, where she brings up how sometimes having merciless imagination can give birth to masterpieces of writing like Cinderella and Snow White, but a story of a child slaughtering lacks any of that same finesse. This is probably because the story that Cheshire Cat told us in this location was the one of the family that fell upon death, everybody died, and it was a story that was written by the Grimm brothers, aka us, in this game, and was a story that was kind of pointless, even too dark for them to keep in their collection of stories. Next we find Red Hood in the ruined brothel in Upper Lutwidge Town, with her referencing how the fog in this place reminds her of the Lost Empire, the kingdom we found ourselves stuck in back in Black Souls 1. the one garden that we originally began everything in. She mentions that the real world outside of this fake world we are inside of is apparently as miserable of a state, but things like power and balance are all crumbling there. However, that real world is still somehow much better than this crazy world that we're inside of, which is insane to imagine. But this time something happens to Grimm. We aren't able to talk to her normally, like our mind gets foggy instead, and suddenly all we can say is Alice. And then all we can do is attack Red Hood. This, I hated. I hated that the game forces you to do this. Like, this one was just awful. But again, it shows that Grimm is under some sort of spell. Something is compelling him to look for Alice and causing him to do unspeakable things. Luckily, Red Hood manages to calm us down and Grimm gains back his senses, but in doing so realizes that we just hurt probably the only person on our side helping us, and the only other decent human being in this shithole. Next up, though, we'll find Red Hood outside of Oxford University. But when we take the elevator down to Carroll River, after leaving her, our game freezes and flickers. Or does it? This is yet another jump scare in the game. The elevator gets stuck when our send value is too low, as the world suddenly throws jump scares at you to mess with you. It's interesting because there are more of these throughout the game, and they can affect your gameplay quite heavily. You can get a lot of jump scares because of it, but it's just interesting to see. In the Carroll River, we also can now find some strange flames we hadn't seen before. These seem to be memories of sorts, so we read the first one.
All in the golden afternoon, full leisurely we glide, for both our oars with little skill, by little arms applied, with little hands make vain pretense our wanderings to guide. Ah, cruel three, in such an hour, beneath such dreamy weather, to beg a tale of breath too weak to stir in tiniest feather. Yet, what can one poor voice avail against three tongues together?
Now, this is a poem called Golden Afternoon, the framing device used for Alice in Adventures Underground. Like, basically, it's the original version of Alice in Wonderland. It was written on a boat ride where Lewis Carroll, the creator of Alice in Wonderland, was with the Liddell sisters, including Alice Liddell. The poem seems to reflect him writing and creating the world of Wonderland while telling the made-up poems to the girls on the boat. Also, given it's all on a boat, it makes sense. This entire place is referred to as Carroll River. This is a manifestation of that river in Black Souls' Wonderland. This is where he, metaphorically, was sailing and creating these stories. Either way, as we move on from the memory, we can find Red Hood once again. This time she tells us something intriguing. She mentions Linda Maya, the Black Knight belonging to the Black Trial from the first game. This was a group that hunted sinners. So if you committed a sin by killing someone or committing, carnal acts in the game, he would come after you, or they would come after you, the entire thing. But she mentions that apparently Linda Maya has returned, or that we might run into Linda Maya at some point. The next place we find Red Hood is the Ripon Grand Cathedral. This time, she simply talks about thinking that all the gods are bastards in this universe, which I'm inclined to agree with. Afterwards, though, we can find her in the Mushroom Village, followed by her appearance in the Duchess Mansion. However, the next place that we find her is back in Lutwidge Town, where she's going to be facing off against some sort of beast. We see her standing on top of the roof, and we can see the monster underneath her. If we attack it, it's called the Beggar Wolf. We can easily kill it, and in doing so, Red Hood jumps down and thanks us, giving us a smooch and leaving. We can only speculate that the beast we just took down was her wolf, and it seems like this world's corruption got to him and turned him, like everyone else, into a demon beast. Following this moment, one of the next locations we need to revisit is that of the Queen of Torture Tools. Her boss fight, once again, is going to be something we have to take on, but this time Red Hood will beat her to join us in the fight. However, there's also some new dialogue that now appears. It seems that the Torture Queen is Red Hood's mother, aka Elizabeth. Yes, the same Elizabeth from Black Souls 1. She was the one who sold us different souls in that game, and she was always a bit of an asshole. She was extremely hateful towards Red Hood, so in this fight, it's no different. We will fight her once more, and luckily, after the fight, she finally realizes that something wasn't right with her mind. Turns out that she had harbored all that hatred due to changes made to her mind, but none else than the original mastermind of Black Souls 1, Mary Sue. Which also makes sense to Red Hood, as it seems most, if not everyone, she has encountered so far has had their origins, their stories and minds altered in some way. We separate once more and continue our journeys completely different paths. The next place Red Hood is found is the Beach of Grief, but first we find another flame of memories. So, of course, we read this one.
He will find her. He has carefully nurtured true love for this sole reason. Human emotions are difficult. Without an intervention, they wouldn't develop to one satisfaction. How many years has passed since then? Still a friendless bachelor, still spending all my time on math, photography, and writing in a gloomy attic. Every single night, the dazzling smile of that little girl came to his mind. I'd already grown old. Only wanted to see Alice one last time before I died. I hoped that the right away my hope was answered. A letter arrived for me, an invitation to a Christmas party. The sender, Alice Liddell. Hoarse voice of an old woman called his name. In the end, he turned to face her. Wrinkly skin colored by protruding blood vessels, bony arms, discolored hair. Ah, he gets it. He's such a fool. Deep in his heart, he already knew it, didn't he?
That was one of the most uncomfortable moments for me in this entire game. I will elaborate more about this towards the end of the video, as we don't have the complete picture of all of this yet, but you can already make some deduction from just the surface level reading of that text. It should give you an idea what kind of image this game is trying to paint of Lewis Carroll, the writer of Alice in Wonderland. Either way, we managed to find Red Hood once again, but this time nothing special happened, so we move on. To make further progress, we'll need to return back to Queensland, and you can enter the castle and find yet another memory. This memory is interesting to say the least. You can pause the video and read it, but with that out of the way, we can check the chest, and Alice appears behind us. Or does she? Well, she's not here either. We can keep exploring the remainder of the Queen's Castle, and in one of the rooms we find her. This is the Red Idol Pricket. Now, why the F is she a idol in this universe? It doesn't really make sense, but hell if I know. What we know is that she is the Red Queen, seemingly. She is also clearly complicit in some of the really messed up things taking place in this world. She's kind of aware of everything going on. We can try to kill her, or simply interact with her. She mentions that we have to keep looking for Alice, reiterating it over and over again, which is odd. Why does she want us to look for Alice so much? Nobody else seems to. Either way, leaving her, we exit into the hallway where a previously locked door is now open. Inside is a fog gate and a summon for Daddy Longlegs. Alright, a bit odd. But the boss fight we face off against is the King and the Queen, or rather the Emperor and Empress, Sibimet and Tabikat. We beat them and we received the Daddy Longlegs fairy tale. However, this whole situation was strange, but what is even stranger and more fucked up is what we find in the basement. As we descend down there, there's only one thing I can see. It's her. It's the fairy. It is Leaf. Or as you might recall, it's Mary Sue. And now she's called Mary Ann from Black Souls 1.
Ah, Grimm, it's you, isn't it? You came to save me. Yay! As expected of my prince. I've always believed in you more than anyone. But you sure took your time. I was sort of getting tired of waiting. So you can hurry up and come here. Properly reward you even if you do it.
Yeah. This little shit is captured and we have the ability to save her. Or we can do cardinal acts towards her, but each choice can lead to a different outcome. But given our hunt for the other game endings, I release her. But doing so, she instantly tries to betray me. However, it doesn't work. There is a barrier keeping her stuck inside of this place, and clearly she hasn't changed since the first game. She seems somber about the whole thing, and it turns out she isn't the mastermind of this place, or at least that is what she tells us. She has been kept here by some force, something that's beyond even her power. So, we leave her down here and move on to the next location, because we gotta go to Red Castle Fristle. Here we find Red Hood, who mentions that everyone in the castle has gone insane. In one of the croquet rooms, we can find yet another memory, and this one is clearly about Lewis Carroll handing the poem he wrote, or rather book he wrote, to Alice Liddell. And the last and final memory we'll find is in the Oxford University. In one of these secret rooms, we can find the final memory. Once we've gotten our hands on all of these memories, we can head back to the library and try to start a new cycle. But when we are prompted to choose which Alice to go for, we choose to go for none of them, instead giving the prompt Alice Liddell. We are now in a new location. The Nightmare. The place is sprawling with enemies, but each of these particular NPCs is peculiar as they're all essentially the girls we could get as covenants in the game, like Griffey the Griffin and many others. These are the fairy tales. One of the most insane fights has got to be against Lizard Bill, who calls us some insane shit when we face off against her. It's, I don't know, I'm not sure what to call him. But the walls here also repeat the Alice name and the number 185254, the birth date of the real Alice, May 4th, 1852. We then find nodes, and we have the options of ignoring her or facing her. Both lead to different outcomes, and if we were to face her, we'll learn that she has been serving the outer gods, and that all those covenants and women we met had been used to essentially be incubated by Grimm, for him to continue a fucked up cycle over and over again of carnal acts and loops non-stop. It's all just messed up, and if we ignore her and continue past her, we can reach a strange conclusion. We run into Bandersnatch, Jub, and Jabberwock. These are 3 out of the 4 people that we were told by Node to deal with. They're all here and they're in cahoots to fight us. But coming to our rescue is Miranda? No, it's not exactly Miranda from Black Souls 1. Rather, this is the Ghoul. I'll still refer to her as Miranda, though, but yeah, she's here. It's weird. She is a ghoul, and she's someone we can meet in the Beach of Grief, where she is hanging out, and also where we meet Red Hood. Alongside her is also Hein, formerly of the Black Trial, and they're all offering to help us in this fight against these 3 beasts. Jabberwock does end up sort of betraying her 2 comrades in this fight, but not before getting in some jabs about the greater ones in this whole situation. Hein does sustain some damage as well, so I leave Miranda to deal with him and instead enter the next room where I find Red Hood. But unfortunately, Leaf appears once again. And this time around, we are prompted with an option. A not so hard one, but an option nonetheless. Do we stand with Mary Ann, the evil little fairy that's done nothing but harm to us, or do we stand with Red Hood, the only person that's been on our side properly? This will give us 2 different endings, so we start by going the path of Red Hood and seeing what that results in. Of course, choosing Red Hood means that Leaf is going to be extremely pissed off, and she decides to attack us and start a boss fight. But she still doesn't give up, even after we defeat her in this boss fight, and keeps yapping about being in control, which is when the funniest shit happens. Grimm fucking clocks her in the face and knocks her the hell out. I mean, this was unironically the funniest moment I've had in this game and made me laugh out loud while recording the gameplay. Like, I did not see that coming. Now, however, before we enter the White Void, Red Hood tells us something very terrible. It turns out that while on her search, she was able to uncover a few different things. One of those things is that her lifespan has been set in stone, and to be very short. And that our predisposition, as Grimm, is all set in stone by the creators of this world, meaning that she will die shortly after we leave this place, and that Grimm is always going to fail. So, after doing that, we enter the other side and find the riverside. This is where we started the game, and there is Alice once again. After some exposition about Grimm having to love her and how this is all meant to go this way, and that Grimm is cursed to always search for her, we're given the ability to make a carnal act with her. However, as soon as we click it, Red Hood RKO's that bitch out of nowhere! Now, I've been waiting for this! Hell yeah! This is it! This is the mastermind, the crawling one, the one behind it all, a messed up amalgamation of desires and fucked up thoughts based on a particular person. This is one of the great ones, and it's one of the outer gods, one of these creatures that creates worlds, and it's been haunting us this entire journey constantly. So, with the boss fight ensuing, this thing is hard to beat, but I also have to completely censor this because it's really weird. It's a bunch of Alice heads and a lot of stuff everywhere. However, as soon as we kill it in the situation, everything turns dire. The world is now collapsing with its creator gone. With us rushing out as fast as we can, the roof collapses and Red Hood is separated from us. We have to leave her behind, and in doing so, we escape into a white void. There, yet another Alice waits for us. It's getting kind of frustrating to keep finding this girl, but this Alice seems different, at least at first. She's weeping. She's afraid of us and is seeking her teacher. We then see a ghost of sorts appear, the representation of Lewis Carroll. He comes to her rescue, and before you know it, we awaken. We are in a small cottage, and walking outside of it, we find Red Hood. It's finally over. This was ending G, what I would consider the closest to a good ending, but there is only one big issue. Why are we back in the library again? Yep, before I answer that, remember how we got to choose Leaf over Red Hood? Well, what happens if we do the other thing instead? Well, first of all, Node reveals to us that Mary Sue created us as Grimm. We are the creation of worlds of writers and different people like the Grimm brothers and many others. A combination of all those minds into one creature, one character. And then the crawling one is the one who created this particular world and this scenario to keep us in a loop of birthing more and more creatures. But next is Leaf. If we join her, she'll take down Red Hood, and together we face Alice together and kill her. Then Mary Ann reveals that the crawling one is the husband of her mother, Baphomet, from the first game. But that this thing, the crawling one, even disturbs Mary Ann. She wants it gone so she can write her own messed up fan fiction again, just like she did in Black Souls 1. The fight against the crawling one is pretty easy this time around. We beat her, and Mary Ann is very happy with that. Mary Ann sees this moment as her opportunity now to create yet another world, another garden, but the world that we find ourselves in is a looping one. Turns out we didn't beat the crawling one. It was all just a trick. Instead, it trapped Mary Ann and Grimm in a dollhouse of sorts, watching on as Grimm repeatedly commits carnal acts towards Anne over and over for what feels like hundreds of years. This ending was fucking gruesome. It felt kind of sick. As much as I hate Mary Ann, seeing that was not fun. This game, it's just so disgusting, it's hard to even quantify compared to some other stuff. I hadn't even gotten to the most disgusting element of this whole thing yet, but I will have an entire section about it later in this video. So with that, you'd think we've seen all the game's endings. Well, no, not really. You see, I have refrained from bringing it up at this point, but this game's endings are all bad endings. As in, there's no positive outcome, but there are seemingly multiple other endings which don't end with the cycle continuing. Another thing I've also yet to mention is that Black Souls 2 has something that the other Black Souls game didn't have, and that is 3 DLCs. Yes, DLCs that you can unlock. Now, 2 of these DLCs are much smaller in scale, where one of them is a much more important one and also allows you to see the game's true ending. To start with, we go and find Miranda on the Dread Beach. But this is also the area used as an entrance into one of the game's second DLCs. This is the one which takes you to the underwater world. This place increases the difficulty levels of the game by tenfold and makes things far harder. However, for plot relevance, there are a few things you can find down here, though I think I'll skip over this DLC and instead focus on the more important one, and also one of the more important ones for gameplay, which is the Chaos Dungeon. Now, this place is kind of sick. It's essentially an entirely separate roguelike system added in. Basically, you speak to Mabel. She is the manager of this place. She is essentially also a little god of her own. And she creates these infinite randomly generated dungeons which will allow you to grind for souls and better loot much quicker. You even have boss fights down here, and honestly, I could make an entire whole video just about the Chaos Dungeon and how many levels there are to it and how different it feels every time. But honestly, going into its many enemies and mechanics and boss fights would take me forever. The only one you need to worry about is there is a boss fight called the Old King, which you need to kill because it's a prerequisite to unlock the third and most important DLC for this game. The one DLC that will allow you to get the special endings, and also the hardest DLC in this entire game. So, for now, we're going to skip over the Chaos Dungeon and also the second DLC of the Underwater World and go straight into DLC 3. So let's get to it. From here, what matters is that we head back to the Carroll River. Here we'll find a boat. It was previously here too, but this time, if we enter it, it will take us to a small island with a door. And if we enter the said door, something happens.
And so the theatre's course has been prepared. Moment by moment by moment, the gears mincing my brain reverse their rotation. The little girl wearing human shape is calling. A drifter? Yes, Lady Florence. Open the coffin. You poor thing. Like the others, you were able to reach this place because you're sick. You must be hurting. You must be suffering, so I know as much by sight, sick in my body and mind, in such a terrible state. However, you've no need to worry. Now that you're here, you won't ever be left to die alone. Please, let me save you with my hands. Lady Florence, this night alone you brought salvation to 38 patients. Congratulations. Thank you. Now we must hurry to build a new sick room. Lady Florence, 6 patients from room 203 have been murdered. Must be that devil again. A damn parasite haunting people's dreams. About this one, getting to the room for quiet sleep. Medication will need to be administered.
We have awoken to a lady with a dog muzzle on her face, seemingly taking care of us. We're now left to explore what's called the Crimean Nursing Graveyard, a very strange-looking hospital filled with what I can only describe as the most unhinged group of sick people you'll ever meet. The game offers us the ability to kill all the patients off, which is highly recommended to be done, because not doing so will punish you later in this DLC. In one of the side rooms, we can uncover a Necronomicon, a new item, but also a mimic of all things, hiding as a present. However, the strangest thing yet in this room is a girl with a burlap sack on her head. She teaches us a few things. First of all, we learn about Lady Florence, the woman doctor we saw earlier with the dog muzzle that saved us. Turns out she has been to Wonderland, which is separate from this place. Apparently, they're 2 different worlds. Apparently, also, Lady Florence actually tried to save people in Wonderland and worked and created the mental institute there. But she ran everything on her own, and, well, she just couldn't do it all on her own over there. So she opened this place instead. Everything about this person seems formidable and admirable. However, the burlap girl does also ask us to bring her viscera to help with her condition. To get this viscera, we can head upstairs to another office, but for me to get there, I had to first make a few mistakes, starting with this. See, on the ground there's a bunch of messages, and it tells us to not go inside of this room, but I decide to do it anyways. We start getting hunted. This caught me again completely off guard. Even though I read the messages, I did not expect this. Sure, there are a few jump scares in this, like in the base game. However, this felt far more out of the blue. The sound, the flickering, everything was terrifying. And before long, we are now in some sort of prison cell. The wall tells us to stand still. Alright, so that just happened. If we try to go back to the room, it's no longer a winding hallway with a monster jump scaring us. Instead, we take the elevator outside named the Coffin and go to the upper floor. Different floors contain rooms with new weapons like God's Angel Sword, and another room that has the fairy tale Nightingale on the floor. And in one of the rooms, we can meet Dr. Jekyll. We can buy viscera from him and give them to the burlap girl. However, we are here to take him on in a fight. The man is incredibly powerful, especially when he reveals his other half. His name implies that he is Jekyll from Jekyll and Hyde, with the other half of him being present in the fight and much stronger. If we head back to the jump scare hallway, we can meet a really messed up little creature. This is the brutalizing angel Lingerina. How do you say that? Lingerina? Lingerina? I don't really know. Either way. Except she isn't really an angel. She's actually far from anything like an angel. She's actually a demon. And she will pull our leg for a whole while here as we try to hunt her around the entire hospital. See, she has fake wings on and a fake halo above her head. She's the demon that's been going and taking out people here. Every time that the doctor tries to save someone, Florence, she tries her hardest, but then this demon is going around and just killing people off that she's trying to keep alive. Honestly, I don't like this thing, but eventually, if we go around the hospital, the patients will start to become hostile. And you will die if they face you and you attack them. These enemies are immune to lots of our attacks, so trying to beat them is almost impossible. Instead, we need to find several candles to light the center of the main hall to open up the next progress point. However, this is why I said killing the actual patients before this point was the best thing to do, because then they will not be in your way. Now, if we try to go up the elevator right now, something strange actually appears. Instead of the usual 4 floors, there's a 5th floor in red. If we press it or try to ignore it, the floor just keeps appearing over and over and over. So we accept it and enter the 5th floor. She is back, and she doesn't stop hunting us. We keep running and running until finally escaping, or at least it seems like that. We enter into what looks like a battle painting, a war painting, and it's particularly a possible painting of the Crimean War. Remember, the hospital is called the Crimean Hospital, or Graveyard Hospital, and this could be the battle in the 1800s between the Russian forces and the Allied group consisting of the Ottomans, the French, the British, and the Sardinian forces. It's a weird combo, I'm not gonna lie, but it's a weird inclusion in this game's world. I mean, so far we've seen fairy tales, we've seen some online-related stories that have been used as inspiration, but this is a historical thing that's being used, which is really strange. I don't know. Also, this entire place feels so out of place compared to the regular Wonderland. Have you ever noticed it? It feels like a different location, a different world from Wonderland itself. There are obvious connections to Dr. Florence having founded, the mental institute in Wonderland, but this is still a strange location in comparison to that. Either way, once we finally go through this place and exit the painting, we find ourselves in a final lamp spark room. It's sort of revealed that the woman that was chasing us wasn't actually trying to hurt us. Seems she was trying to keep us from getting the sparks so we wouldn't have to suffer with what comes next. Once all the sparks are lit in the center of the room, a staircase opens and we get a warning telling us that we'll need a restoration skill ahead. That's because we're about to face off against the boss fight called Nurse Call.
This is a unique boss fight, as it introduces a new mechanic called Holy Domain, Plague Dominion. This causes us to lose about 10% of our HP every freaking turn, and all the items are disabled for healing. This is going to force us to use any and all magical abilities that we have on hand, which can heal our character. And this whole damn, thing feels like a domain expansion thing from, JJK, but this mechanic is going to stay throughout this entire DLC and is one of the biggest reasons why the fight here becomes 10 times harder than anything prior, as fighting now adds a new element each time. It's a bit of a gimmick, but I don't feel like it takes anything away from the game. If anything, it just adds a cool element of difficulty, and it needs you to, as a player, adapt and try to figure out how to beat the bosses, even though they have these extra changes. But either way, we take her on, and luckily we have some abilities that allow us to combo together a few debuffs against her, and of course we have the move Requiem, which essentially just allows us to survive an entire one-shot kill from the nurse, and with that, the nurse is defeated. You'd think we'd get, to chill a bit, but far from it, because the next room holds Florence. She reveals some unsightly things to us. She knows we are undead, but not a ghoul, and that our body has been altered by the Outer Ones, the gods that create these worlds and constantly torture us. And it turns out she was also created by them, or rather her body was altered in some way similar to us. She asks us to remain here in the hospital. She doesn't promise to be able to cure our disease, as she sees it to be difficult to do, but she will still try. She basically demands us to remain. But we deny her again. So, in her mind, the only thing left to do is to force us to remain here, as that is the only thing she can do, is to fight us. And this battle is going to be against the founding Dr. Florence, and it's honestly one of the saddest ones in this game. We could have avoided this completely had we done a bit of a side quest much earlier back in Wonderland at the mental ward. If we meet a specific character there, he could have given us a letter, and had we shown this letter to her, we could have skipped the battle and what's about to come. However, since I skipped that option, now instead I have to fight her. And even as we take her on in the fight, it's probably going to piss a lot of you off, and I get it. A lot of people like this character a lot, and I'm sorry, but we have to take her down, unfortunately. I just completely overlooked this side quest for her. But either way, the fight against her starts off pretty easy, but eventually she transforms her body into a bird amalgamation, homunculus looking thing, which is terrifying. However, we have yet another domain to deal with. This time, all attack and all defense is minus 100%, and HP recovery from skills and items damages instead of healing. This feels almost impossible to do, but it's not, because we can still seemingly use moves that are draining attacks. So going for anything that drains health from the enemy actually will end up working, and using things like, I don't know, Acid Rain is another thing you can use because it helps out a ton, since Acid Rain does percentage damage and is unavoidable, so we could actually use that. With Florence beat, things feel somber. It's not like we wanted to take her down. We are kind of just left with one option at this point, since we don't have the letter, which is to kill her or do unspeakable things to her. So, we give her a mercy kill. This was by far one of the most hurtful moments in this game. Like, taking her out wasn't something I wished to do or wanted to do, but this game constantly pushes you into these situations of questioning your own choices. Why are we doing any of this? Do the ends justify the means? Just because we want to get the endings in the game, we're going to take out a person who was genuinely trying to help? I mean, it's not much else we can say. And as we take the elevator out of her room, we crash as all these eyes stare upon us. We now awaken in a remote jail. One cell holds the playwright Lord, possibly Andre the Lord, the creator of the Grand Guignol. It's a horror theater show consisting of several short plays, all with horror as a theme. Now, this would actually be interesting because that entire play explores human psychology and different sorts of trauma, and is often very macabre, like very, very disgusting, sort of, with Guignol now being synonymous with essentially over-the-top or violent theatrical horror displays, which a lot of that has inspired movies nowadays, which are horror-based often. Either way, as we go in here, we talk to him, and then we can exit the prison, where we find ourselves in the deserted, snowy road. On the way, in the distance, we can see a castle. It's a real castle, actually. It's one you can find in France, Mont Saint-Michel, a castle almost appearing out of the water, as during tides, it looks like it's submerged upon a river that it's within. It's kind of cool, actually, because it's used essentially as a defense mechanic back in the day. That was why it was built there specifically. We also meet a little girl named Gerda. Interesting name, but she seems friendly, and we're able to chat with her, which is important as this will launch us into yet another side quest. She is looking for her dear friend Kai, a boy around her age that ran away outside, so she's trying to discover where he might be at. Exhausting her dialogue and heading into the next location, we reach the Avalanche Woods, and we find what I can only describe as a bloody mess. In the center waits a lovely character. This is Carnegie, the Ghost Finder. He is from exactly the same named books where he is the titular main lead. They're literally called Carnegie, the Ghost Finder. I don't know, something like that. It's a series of books about this guy who is a detective who seeks out the occult, monsters, and all manner of creatures. And now he is here trying to figure out where the Crown of Cinderbell is. Now, currently, this world and this land we're in, which isn't Wonderland, it's a new place, it's currently in a war. It's embroiled in a conflict between the unicorn and the lion, both of which are two creatures that appear in some form, weirdly enough, in the UK's, like, Royal Coat of Arms. I always assumed it was, like, 3 lions, but I guess that's just for football. But either way, it's also, interestingly enough, a nursery rhyme. I'm not going to read out the entire thing, but funny enough, the nursery rhyme was actually used by Lewis Carroll, who then incorporated the lion and the unicorn as characters in his novel Through the Looking Glass. So there's clearly a connection there, a crown that they're fighting for, which belongs to the White King. In this case, it's the White Queen, I think, in the context of Black Souls 2. But again, it's clearly a Lewis Carroll-inspired thing. There's also an essay by George Orwell, of all people, which is also about the Lion and the Unicorn, but it's more about World War II, and it's unrelated. Instead, we'll chat with Carnegie and learn more about the situation in front of us. See, if we head south, we'll find the unicorn leader. And if we head north, we'll find the lion leader. Here, the game actually lets us choose which side we wish to go with. The unicorn path is easier on paper, in the sense that it is shorter. However, the lion path is slightly longer, but it does come with some other benefits, so to say. For now, we'll be taking the lion's path, where we join the white lion, Layden. On the other side, if we had gone with the unicorn, it would have been with Eunice, who hates men. So we join the lion and head north into the snowfield. Now, this place is constantly snowing, and it's blinding us, and we need to just run and avoid fights, because the unicorns and lions in this space will destroy us. There is no other way to use, no other word to use, nothing we can say besides they will destroy us. We also run across an igloo in the middle of this mess, and inside we'll meet Gerda again. However, if we want to make sure we complete her side quest with the best outcome, we shouldn't talk to her just yet. Instead, we should leave her and return later. So, as we do that, we head back into the snowfield and eventually find our way out into the windless valley, getting yet closer to the castle that was in the distance. Carnegie waits here and we chat a bit. The man is on a mission, clearly, looking for that crown of winter or whatever. Now, as we cross the chain bridge, a nightmare spirit jump scares and invades us. It's the Prince of Hell, or rather it looks like an upside down owl, but I digress. Beating this thing will give us Lord's fountain pen. If we bring it back to him in the prison, he doesn't really say much besides mentioning that his child, whoever that might be, has chosen us over him. It's weird and disturbing, and the explanation for now doesn't really make any sense, so we just move on. However, a battle does await us before we enter the castle, and it's the Wind of Winterbell which appears. With its domain expansion, it's so JJK, not allowing us to basic attack it. So basically, we will not be able to hit it with normal attacks, and it also reduces our evasion and defense by 70%, so dodging attacks becomes much harder. Now, it's not ideal, but beating this wind will be easier than the previous domains, purely because we can just try to buff the shit out of ourselves a ton. And yes, I get it. Buffing ourselves, it might not be the most fun thing in the world and just using constant buffs, but it is the most efficient way to win this, and of course debuffing the enemy. Now, with the wind beaten, Carnegie appears and pretends like he did all the work. Gotta love this asshole. But we also see Layden again. She thanks us by shoving our face into her massive bosom. It's very peak Black Souls 2, I must say. Next, we find the gates to the city, but Eunice is here blocking our way. Luckily, Layden, our lovely lady, helps us and fights her for us. We instead manage to then explore the town little by little. In one room, the Prince of Hell appears again and fights the shit out of us after doing a jump scare. In the other hallway, we also find Carnegie, and we stop him from getting killed in a hidden room, which is clearly a fucking trap. He thought it would hold the crown, but no, it's just a bunch of cakes. We also uncover a temple while exploring. Inside, a talking snowman can be found. He says he was created by Gerda to imitate the likes of Kai, her friend. Turns out the real Kai passed away, but Gerda hasn't accepted it. The poor girl is constantly looking for him, and this is also the reason we didn't speak to her in the igloo. See, had we done that, we would not have been able to make sure things go the right way. You see, if we had spoken to her, we wouldn't have been able to stop her from seeing what's here. But now we can make sure things go the right way. By talking to the snowman, he tells us to kill him, to end his misery. And if we do this, and then head back to Gerda in the igloo and talk to her, she will leave the igloo and head to the temple. But she won't find the snowman. Instead, when she gets there, she'll see nothing. And as we walk in, the ground keeps telling us to kill her. Kill her. Why is the game wanting us to end this innocent child's life? I have a bit of a theory of my own, but you're gonna have to bear with me. We've seen references already to the Grand Guignol, right? It's sort of a macabre, theater thing. It's all about horror and the terrible, and this entire game is constantly pushing us towards doing terrible things. But this is the one moment where it lets you choose. Same thing with Florence. We could have saved her. And with Gerda, we're going to save her. Because the options that we are given are kill, or let's look together. Maybe it's cruel to let this girl live in this fantasy and this belief of her friend being alive still. But simply killing her for living in denial is the most fucked up and unreasonable thing ever. It's like, It's like the first time that the actual heart of our character gets to appear. It's as if a part of humanity that still remains within our character Grimm is able to shine through and appear from the depths of depravity that this fucking game is. And the game is still trying to push us towards the bad thing. Keep in mind that we have choices, but the game doesn't always allow you to choose. Here, it's a perfect example where you can choose. The player's agency is open. It's wide open. It's in your hands. It's completely there. And being able to just help a poor child out, a suffering individual, feels nice once for all. We aren't a terrible monster this time around. Humanity and good shines through, even if the act can be viewed as cruel in some way. It's better than taking a life simply because this world's fucked up creator wants us to do horrible shit. With that done, we can check south of the city and find an old foe. There's a battle against the Black Knight Lindame from Black Souls 1. It's a cool reference, as he still refers to us as a sinner, and yet again hunts for Black Souls, so it's pretty neat. But given I'm a total wimp at this point, I lose against the Black Knight, and instead, we head towards the castle. Here we can finally get to face off against Eunice the Unicorn. She has a domain expansion, which makes it's the most annoying thing in the world. Basically, it makes unavoidable attacks completely nullified. So any attack that has 100% accuracy will not work. But the hardest part of this fight isn't that, though, because once you take her health down a little bit, she will then spawn in multiple Eunices that she duplicates into 4 targets, making this battle so much harder, because we can't use, like, there's specific attacks you can use that hit every single target because they have a 100% accuracy. Well, guess what? They are nullified. They don't do anything. So instead, we need to find a real one, which is way harder than you'd think. So we need to do an ungodly amount of time of trying and attempts until we find a real one. And mind you, she can also hit back, so we gotta survive her attacks too. But eventually, we take her down, so then she meets her fate to Leyden. She just knocks the shit out of her. She kills her and then asks if we want to destroy this land given its corruption. So we agree, but on the way inside, we run across something strange.
The rain, it's blood. And in front of us is Mabel, who runs the Chaos Dungeon.
And then she reveals the blood belongs to Leyden's friends. The people who fought with her, like her wolves. We're offered to save Leyden, and we do exactly that. By pushing Mabel away, it's once again a terrible moment, but Mabel simply treats it all as a giant joke. If we ignore her and try to enter the castle, she keeps interrupting us over and over again, wanting to tell us a story, but we just rage bait her until she loses her shit. Like, she will actually have a special reaction if you ignore her multiple times. It's kind of funny. But eventually, though, we enter the other side, and it holds a beautiful beach location. Apparently, this is Winterbell. Seems like kind of false advertising because the name does not match. It's a beautiful beach location. It kind of looks like I don't know, like Greece or something. But in one of the rooms, we can find Mabel. She's laying on the ground with wine dripping all across the floor. She yaps about not feeling treated nicely by the outer ones, while only existing to prop up Alice. In one of the rooms, we find a teddy bear with a memory. And as we read it, we can learn a few details.
Hey, give me back my ability to change. You're being an annoyance, quiet. I've done nothing wrong. The crawling one tricked me. It's all his fault. He's the big bad mastermind. I'm tired of your antics. If you think you can fool me, you're being naive. How can you be so mean to me? I'm scared. Here I'm suffering. Save me, hey! I've already saved you. Were I a moment too late, the crawling one would have left nothing of you. Your creations have negative influence on other great ones. Never again will you hold dominion as a great one. Please accept this reality. Duh. You don't get to say that, but with you being in love with my Grimm. What, you thought I didn't notice? The deep analysis of a character's psyche is my specialty after all. That is nonsense. That person is not my match. I may allow my body to be enraptured, but never my mind. Oh, I know all about it. About your dirty little secret. You try to lead me on in hopes of obtaining any sort of leverage on me, but that is futile. I've had enough talking with you for a lifetime, this all. This lame garden should just go under. Yes, it will eventually face ruin. No garden lasts forever. Such is the way of the world. Whatever, not like I care. Now I'm a kidnapped princess. Soon enough my prince will come and save me. Can't wait for you, my Grimm. Huh? Another visitor? Now who is it gonna... Oh. Mary. My cute little Mary. Do you want out of here?
So we can learn a few things from this. First of all, Leaf was clearly taken down by the Crawling One in some way, shape, or form. The big bad mastermind of this world is the Crawling One, this outer god of sorts, the one who created the garden where Grimm is currently suffering through, the world of Wonderland as we see it and deal with it. Node clearly saved Leaf, but also imprisoned her. Maybe for our sake. Node also seems to harbor feelings for Grimm as a character. If those feelings are genuine or not, we don't really know. They could have just been planted into her as something that she has to feel for us. However, in the end, we can actually seemingly see the Crawling One appearing. This thing is able to dismantle even Leaf's sinister moves and keep her down. So we now have to go and face it. But as we explore the rest of this Winterbell, we find yet another memory. This time, it's Node talking to Mabel. And Mabel seems to imply in this memory that she didn't want to take part in this giant charade, and rather would have just enjoyed watching from the side than being at the center of it. Meaning this entire world and everything, she didn't really want to mess with it. Here, it's far more clear that Node is on our side, though. She wants to understand us as her being a greater one herself. She holds some fondness for us and wants us to do good. The next memory is another one, but this one is of Mabel again. It's her talking to Sister Alice, one of the Great Ones. She reveals that Mabel had been going around and taking out the outer gods, like Great Ones, seemingly together with the Crawling One and putting them in her collection. Perhaps the Chaos Dungeon could be the place. It's clear that the other Great Ones aren't that happy with how the Crawling One has been doing things. It's been changing and manipulating things in its own favor drastically, so now the other gods are losing their shit. Those other gods being Daughter, Sister, and Mother Alice. Those are three of the other big ones, which we've already encountered before. And it seems like the real Alice, the Crawling One, has been creating some chaos amongst even them. Next waits the most confusing and most disturbing, by far, most shocking section of this game. So let's get to it. Because as we walk, we see a flash of Alice in front of us. But if we follow her, we enter some new place. What in the absolute Black Souls is this? Suddenly, Black Souls 2 turns into a visual novel. We find ourselves in the shoes of Teacher, or rather, Lewis Carroll. We're staying at the home of the Liddell sisters, the actual real-life sisters who were the inspiration, somewhat, to Alice in Wonderland. This is so bizarre, and to make progress, we have to move days forward by answering different questions and basically playing a visual novel. Now, to do this, we enter different rooms and talk to the sisters in different order. And depending on how we answer questions, we'll get different endings. So, let's explain a few things. First of all, the game, or at least the visual novel section of the game here, uses a time system where every action you take basically costs you 1 day. So like if we inspect something, that costs us 1 point, and so on and so forth, and you have a limited amount of these. And based on what you do and the decisions you make, it will branch off into different endings based on the choices and the timings. But there's also other stuff, which is jump scares. Now, these will occur randomly. Like, for example, you can find Alice's corpse under a sofa. There's a creepy, distorted woman that sort of looms over you. There's a dark figure in the hallway, and there's just this creepy girl at the front door. It is weird, but there is quite a bit of it. Then, we, of course, have to talk about the sisters themselves. They're obviously, as already mentioned, based on the Liddell sisters, the actual sisters that Lewis Carroll spent time with, and Alice, of course, being the girl who was inspiration for him. However, it's about time we talk a little bit about Lewis Carroll as a person. And I want to bring this up because this is one of the things that made this game far more disturbing to me than the first one. As much as the Black Souls 1 game has a lot of disgusting things you can do and disgusting things that happen and things of that, This is, I would argue, much worse. Whereas Black Souls 1 takes the question of what happens to art that's created, but then no longer is in the power of the person who wrote it, and instead is eroded or changed by fan writers or fan fiction writers, right? People taking something that someone creates and changing it in their own way or interpreting it their own way. What happens to that, right? And how can a fan completely distort something? But at the same time, it also questioned the people who wrote the original art, their purpose for it, why some art that was written back in the day, whether it was the Grimm's brothers or anyone really, why it was so disturbing at times. Like children's stories, but if you really break them down, they're quite disturbing and should not really be read to children if you really want to go deep into it. But that's not what this game is doing necessarily exactly the same here. It's doing it in a different way by specifically focusing a lot on Lewis Carroll. If you haven't noticed it yet, this entire game is based on his works. Wonderland, it's what he wrote about. The Looking Glass is another thing that constantly, monsters, creatures, characters from those stories of his appear here. And Lewis Carroll is clearly got to be the crawling one. I mean, who else would it be? It's a messed up artist that doesn't want to let go of his creation, not because the creation mattered, but it's what it was based upon. Is kind of a bit of a known fact that Lewis Carroll was a bit of a weirdo, and his relationship to the Liddell sisters, especially Alice of them, was strange. Based on the random memories we found throughout the game, we can tell that he had an obsession with this person, an obsession that is quite disturbing, an obsession that made me uncomfortable. But this kind of brings up a few things to me in some way, which is about the book itself that he wrote. He wrote it about this girl and I guess for her, but then he was stuck with that forever. He wanted that memory to remain, but what he instead got was reality, which is her growing up and not being that person anymore. And that seems to have haunted him in the most fucked up of ways. I'm going to be honest, this entire angle of the game made it really hard to engage with it because it's art that's made from a real man's fucked up desires. Like, we're not like exploring a universal theme like what we did with Grimm and Black Souls 1. This is one guy who has essentially a documented obsession with Alice. It's weird, it's different, but it brings up this idea of like, where do we separate the art from the artist? At what point do we do that? But the difference with Alice in Wonderland is that the entire piece of art is built upon his fucked up desires. I'm pretty sure the Grimm's brothers didn't write stories about wolves eating little girls or anything just because that's what they desired. Rather, it was just a story to scare maybe little children from going outside. I'm actually not sure who wrote Little Riding Hood. The point it's unrelated. The point I'm trying to get at is most stories are written with some level of relevance to the person who wrote them, some sort of connection to them, something that they've experienced or something they take from life experiences, because everything is inspired by something. But Lewis's entire story is based off of, well, obviously, life experiences, but the core of it is obsession. Like, pure obsession. At least that's the vibe I get from it, and it's off-putting. Again, I watched the movie Obsession recently, and it's kind of funny how that movie, handles obsession as, just being this really fucked up thing. And here, we see that essentially manifesting in Black Souls 2. So, the question then is, how do you separate the art and artist, right? Like, art, I think, should disturb and make you uncomfortable. Like, I agree with that concept because I think if you are too comfortable, life is boring and not worth living. If everything was always 100% fine, what's the point? I mean, think about even when you do things in life. If you do something, isn't it more fun to earn your way to something than simply having it handed to you on a platter? Like, if you just simply went and competed in a sports event and you didn't win, or you didn't really do that well, or you didn't do anything, maybe you're just on the bench and they still give you a medal. It's a participation trophy. It's not as fun. But if you actually try your best, if you win, or if you just really try hard at something, the reward is so much sweeter and so much nicer. And then that brings me back to this concept of And I love this quote. I don't know who wrote it, but it's a good quote, which is, art is meant to comfort the disturbed and disturb the comfortable. Because if you are constantly comfortable, you will not be able to handle situations when they do become uncomfortable. You need to know what both things feel like. And I think art is at the best when it can make you feel something. I will again bring up the movie Obsession. I don't think I've ever seen a movie that genuinely stayed with me this long. I've referenced it in my last 2 videos, specifically because it left an impact. And Black Souls 2 does that the same way, but I almost feel like it's more disturbing because it takes something very real and places it in this game. Alice in Wonderland as a story has cultural value. It is a story that I have only known through the movies that were made by Disney, which I thought were creepy even as a kid. I thought they always had a bit of a dark undertone, but at the end of the day, they are classics. They are beloved by so many people. They exist, but they only also exist because of Carol's fixation. And that's kind of the hardest part about covering this game, and that made me just off-put by even doing it. There's no clear answer. On one hand, he created a piece of art that people find beloved, but the reason for its existence could, again, there is no proof for it necessarily, but you can glean what you want from it, but its origin is something potentially awful. I don't like that. But either way, after we're done with this discussion, we can talk again what happens within this entire sequence. See, at the end when you're about to leave, when Carol leaves, you have the option of moving on or looking back. And if you turn around and look back, you'll see 3 dolls. Because none of this was real. Everything we saw in that house is memories and delusions. The real Alice grew up and moved on. So did the sisters. But Carol, he never did. The game is forcing you to inhabit his obsession, his fucked up desires. And I'm pretty sure we're stuck in his world here. This entire place, this constant search for Alice, is his obsession, and we're going through that in Black Souls 2. And it is fucking disturbing, but it is kind of cinema if you think about it. Because it makes you ask a lot of questions. However, from a gameplay point of view, I'm going to be honest, the visual novel part wasn't really my favorite. I didn't enjoy it that much. I thought it was kind of boring. I like visual novels as I've played things like Danganronpa, which I find really entertaining. But here, it was kind of meh. But if you look at it from a purely adding to the story part type of view, it does hold value. So, at least in that regard, it did something. But that's not where things end, you see. Because once we move out, we're back in Winterbell. We're back as Grimm, and Mabel is here too, and we now learn that things can finally end. So, here's the deal. We're actually out of the nightmare, sort of. I mean, we're still stuck in this hellhole, but we now understand that we are Grimm. We're no longer conflicted about that, and we also know that the whole reason for us looking for Alice is just something that's been put into us. Something like a force pushing us to have to try to find her constantly. But it's all just there because the Crawling One wanted it. And the Crawling One as a whole is essentially what brought us into this place, what brought us into this world. An omnipotent being, almost, I would say, the desire of an author. One of the authors, one of the creators, one of the outer gods. In this case, I assume that would be Lewis Carroll, but there is another one. And that is the ultimate villain we're about to try to go take on, which is the Grand Guignol. Which, again, based on a French theater which did horror shows, which is kind of interesting. Because we're up for a battle next here, which is going to be intriguing nonetheless. But first, we enter the castle, and we find Carnegie. He's injured, which is unfortunate. And after we talk to him, he's not able to make it, seemingly. So instead, we can now enter into the final part of the game. But before we go in, this is usually where you have to save, because next is where we're going to get different sorts of endings and conclusions. The first thing, though, is we talk to Mabel. And as we're walking down these stairs, she brings up a lot of things. Talks about the outer gods, their connections, who they are, what they are. And she even brings up that there is a war between gardens. Gardens are being these worlds that we all exist in. Like, for example, in Black Souls 1, the kingdom we were in, that was a garden created by Mary Sue or Mary Ann. A garden that she specifically made where she could toy with Grimm and toy with the desires and creations of these authors. And the world we're in currently, Wonderland, is also one of these. It's a garden that was created to constantly have Grimm in this loop, in this cycle. And of course, Alice being the center of that. Constant birth and rebirth. Not just of Grimm, but also of the different characters in the story. Nonetheless, as we get to the bottom, Mabel tries to betray us. But not really. It turns out she's also influenced by the Grand Guignol. She's also under somewhat of its spell, and we can talk to her, but if we try to save her, the walls keep closing in and in and in. We walk away, but as we walk away, we get invaded by nightmare spirits. It's the Prince of Hell again, and it's pretty clear that this is Lordy, or Lord, whatever you want to call him. It's the man who created the Grand Guignol Theater. It's the man who desires the most macabre of acts. And also, his child is the Grand Guignol, the thing we're about to encounter, the final boss of this game, this manifestation of horror, essentially. And he does not like that it prefers us over him, so we gotta fight him for it. But if we manage to beat him, we are able now to actually summon in some previous comrades, like Gerda, Carnegie, and if we had saved Florence, she'd be available, I think, here too. So it's kind of nice to see that they all can still come through and help us, even if they're not necessarily here anymore. In the case of like Carnegie or Florence, for example. But nonetheless, it's time for the grand battle. Now, we're in the basement of the library, the hub we usually play in. If we walk into the library, images flash, and then we find Alice. But it's not the Alice that I expected. You see, the crawling one, or the dear little girl Alice version, is different from this thing. This is the Grand Guignol. It's the doll we found at Oxford University. It was, all along, the big baddie. The creature that was haunting us. The machine god. An outer mechanical god with the abilities of Mary Sue to change things. And she has full control of this Wonderland. She is the child of the Prince of Hell. And it's co-opted the Alice desire that Lewis Carroll had, and is using that against us. And now we have to fight it. Because it wants to finally become one with us. This fight is quite insane, because taking on the machine god, the Grand Guignol, this is a difficult battle, because it comes in 8 phases. Like, literally. First is the waxwork, then it's triple Alice. Followed by that, you have the Beast of Purity and Predation. Then phase 4, Pure White Prison. Phase 5, No Face. Phase 6, Alice in Marriage. Phase 7, Theater of Darkness. And finally, phase 8, the Grand Guignol. And with the Grand Guignol dead, it should finally be over. And that's at least what it feels like. With the doll broken and destroyed, we are finally free. And this is when Node appears. She realizes that even though she loves Grimm in her own weird way, it's only right to let him go, to finally let him escape this nightmare. And that's exactly what we do. But as we try to leave, the versions of Alice, these pieces, these outer gods keep appearing, trying to stop us. But only the Alice can appear and get us out of this horrifying mess. Unfortunately, she meets the end of the outer gods. And as we try to make it out, we slip and fall, but someone is there to save us. It's Red Hood. She grabs our hand and she's trying to pull us up, but however, they're still here.
They're still trying to grab us, and even on our way out, they're pulling us down. We can try to grab Red Hood's hand to escape with her, but Grimm finally makes a decision. He cuts her loose. By severing his own arm, we fall down into deep, dark darkness, to be stuck there forever. We see as time passes, over and over. All Grimm can do is be stuck amongst the crawling one, suffering for what might feel like thousands of years, until something grasps at him. It's Alice, or at least I think this is the true memory of Alice, the purest form of her, appears and pushes him out of the darkness. There's probably some level of Lewis Carroll in Grimm as a character, because keep in mind, Grimm as a character embodies a lot of different people into one, a lot of different authors. So in this moment, she's finding that part of him and trying to push it out of here to save Grimm, like the man that he is. And finally, out of the light we go. Maybe the part of Grimm that had Lewis in it was the one that was able to create this pure form of Alice to grab him out of the delusion, take him out of the hell. And so we get the heartbroken ending. But it doesn't end there. Because eventually we see Marianne mocking us, but also we witness this.
The morning sun is beautiful. It is. Hey. Could you clasp my hand? Yes, certainly. Today's the happiest day of my life. If only it could last forever. I'm sure it will.
Huh. Okay. So I'm going to just make some assumptions here of what we just saw. But in the bed, I am making the assumption that that's Red Hood. At least that's what I think it is. We know that Red Hood was not going to be able to live too many more years because of how she was altered by the gods. And we know Grimm is always doomed to suffer this fate of losing people around him. And this moment just feels so realistic and so, in a weird way, like heartfelt, which makes sense why this ending is called Heartbroken. Because in reality, the only real person in this entire thing, the only real thing we had was Red Hood, if you think about it. The only one trying to break through, and the only one truly, truly, truly helping us and not manipulating us in any way, shape, or form. And that's it. She's gone, essentially. Doomed to pass away. At least that's my interpretation. If I'm getting it wrong, I'd love your thoughts on it down below, but this was sort of unexpected to me. There is no good ending, but this is the closest you will get to one in this game. There is no happily ever after in this story. But if you're looking for one, this is the closest you're gonna get. And it really caught me off guard. But it's not the only ending, that's the sad part. You see, we could have chosen to offer our soul to the Grand Guignol, which ends with a really disgusting scene. We see Node, and she speaks about how now he can be together with her. They can be together, and he can keep giving her his quote-unquote seed. But she also brings up a few things. As I already mentioned, there is a war that's taking place between gardens, these worlds and creations. But she mentions that with the crawling one and us now being a part of the Grand Guignol, we can end its assault on Wonderland. That
now that we're awakened as a creator, now that we are a creator ourselves, we can actually use the power of creation, something Mabel told us we can do as well, to create our own garden, our own world, which would be peaceful. We've dealt with the crawling one, and together she hopes that we can go to the end of the world, where neither the idiot nor nothingness will be able to touch us. When she says the idiot, by the way, I'm going to quickly derail this conversation, but she's talking about Azathoth, which is also a god from H.P. Lovecraft's universe. It's a creation or a god that is referred to the idiot because it's constantly dreaming and creating things from those dreams. It's asleep, and the fear of the outer gods in this game, in Black Souls 2, and usually any of the other gods in any form, is the fear of the idiot waking up. Because if he was to wake up, everything would be engulfed. Everything in the entire universe, in the cosmos, would be gone. And this ending is a perfect example of why we shouldn't let that happen. But also, it's a perfect example of what happens if we do not fight against the Grand Guignol, if we let it have full control. But that is pretty much as far as we're gonna get. So that was Black Souls 2, like, in its overall entirety. Of course, there are a few places we haven't discussed and a few things we haven't brought up because this game is extremely long, and I could have made this into a 9-hour video, but frankly speaking, I did not feel like doing that. Instead, I'm just going to give some thoughts on this once more. First of all, I think the game is an improvement over the first game, both in how disturbing it is, because there's far more disturbing things, there's far more scary things in this game, whether it is the fact that when you have the curse of the serpent god, you get a bunch of these jump scares, whether it's some of the weird stuff that happens along the way, the messed up stuff that, you know, the connections that are made to Lewis, the variety of Alice's, the disturbing things you run into. There is a plethora of things that make this game disturbing, but the thing about Lewis Carroll and his obsession is probably the thing that was the most off-putting about this playthrough. It made me feel uncomfortable. And I don't know if you guys can grasp that. I would recommend maybe checking the game out yourself if you want to feel and understand it a bit better, if you want to play through the game yourself, because it's a long game. There's a lot to do. There's a lot of characters, items, things you can find. A shout out to the person called Cell, who provided a save file on the internet, which contained a lot of really strong items, which allowed me to play the third DLC, because otherwise I would have not have made this video for the next 2 years, just because of how difficult the third DLC gets without you having access to a shit ton of spells and items and things that you need to get, but that would require you to do several playthroughs, as well as getting hands on specific things that are harder to find. So shout out to Cell for that. But on the other hand, this game is kind of incredible, but also off-putting at the same time. I said this in my first video about Black Souls 1. The graphics can be really hard to accept, whereas a game like, I want to say, Fear and Hunger has an aesthetic that is pleasing to the eye. Like, it looks gruffy and weird and ugly at times, but it's kind of a good ugly. With RPG Maker graphics that are like the standard ones, it's a little bit more difficult to be willing to jump in and play a game like this, because there's so many games out there that at least like do a bit more with the art. But then when there are custom art in this game, they have a charm to them. Like, the almost like hand-drawn texture to them looks really intriguing, and it does add something. But it's unfortunate that a lot of that is tied to the explicit moments of the game, and that there aren't more of these. I would have preferred it if every enemy in this game was hand-drawn instead of using the default RPG Maker model, so that's something that I think is unfortunate. As for the story, I already spoke about this earlier when I was talking about the visual novel, but I think this game once again hits this idea of like, how do you differentiate the art from the artist? How do you separate those two? How do you take something that was written by someone that is a creation of theirs that you can find actual value in, and separate that from the person who might be far worse than you could imagine? And again, it also brings up the idea of, again, fan fiction and creations that exist being molded into something else, but also being able to mix together so many different things into one game is kind of crazy. Being able to take fairy tales, Lewis Carroll, like nursery rhymes, these sort of things, and then mixing into that H.P. Lovecraft with these like entities that are so hard to grasp. This story is so difficult. I've had to read through several threads on other people's like interpretations to be like, am I correct? Do I understand any of this? But that's also kind of the beauty in this game, because you can have so many different interpretations of what you think the things mean in this game, because there might be a specific point that the creator, Eeny, Meeny, Miny, Mo, is trying to get across. But man, it is also more fun when you actually do the meta thing of trying to interpret it yourself. Because that's the thing about art. Once you put it into the world, people can take it as they want. People can break it down and use it whatever way they want to. But that goes both ways. By creating this game, it allows us to interpret it the way we want to. And my interpretation is, at least on the surface level, it's a game about separating and also dealing with the obsession, but also the weirdness between art and a creator of that art. And man, it's a confusing game. It left me sort of stunned a lot of times. It left me sometimes emotional, sometimes confused, and very many times just feeling off-put. But does that mean it's a bad game? No. Because remember, art is meant to make you feel somewhat uncomfortable. It's meant to make you ask questions. It's meant to make you talk about it. If art didn't make you think, is it really doing its job? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for watching. That was the big video on Black Souls 2. Obviously, I haven't gone in depth on every single aspect of this game, and I do apologize if there's something I missed. But of course, if you have any thoughts or opinions, let me know in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe. And of course, join our Patreon. I haven't promoted it enough, but the Patreon is there. It helps me, of course, make these videos because they do take a long time to just create, to animate stuff for them. It is a very tedious process and it takes a while, so any support would be appreciated and would go a long way, so thank you for that. And of course, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Have a great day.